Ripples of Healing and Hope. How one woman's healing unfolded, and how yours can too. Written and narrated by Melinda Eve Rivera. Dedication. For my mother, whose love still echoes in the laughter of my children, whose voice lives on in the stories I tell, and whose spirit dances through every ripple of healing in my life. You didn't preach, you loved. You didn't demand belief, you lived it quietly, graciously, and truthfully. You taught me to love people as they are, for all their stuff, and to see the beauty in each soul. In your presence, I've always felt safe to explore, to wonder, to grow. Somehow, that freedom planted seeds of faith in me that would bloom long after. Only in your final year did I fully glimpse the depth of your quiet faith, how deeply you longed for me to see God's handiwork, not with pressure, but with hope. Now I see it, Mom. I see him everywhere. And I see you in every beam of light that breaks through the clouds. You gave me room to find my own way, and what a miraculous journey that has been. Thank you for loving me into the fullness of who I am, and for trusting that I'd come to know the one who created me. For every soul holding on through their own storm, may you find your ripples, and may you always know you are never alone. How to read this book. This is not a book you need to rush through. There are no rules here, no gold stars for finishing quickly. Ripples of Healing and Hope is an invitation to slow down, breathe deeply, and let healing meet you right where you are. Each chapter is a ripple, its own sacred movement in the larger current of healing. Some ripples are gentle, others stir deep, but all are part of something greater, unfolding at just the right pace and just the right time. You may feel called to read cover to cover, or you may find yourself returning to a single ripple again and again. That's okay. Trust the rhythm your heart needs. Grief, like this book, does not ask to be completed. It's not a task to finish or a chapter to close. It moves in waves, sometimes fierce and crashing, other times still and quiet. My own grief journey has unfolded slowly and continues to shape me. You may find that your relationship with this book changes over time. As you grow, as your story evolves, and as your own ripples stretch further into the world, you might feel the need to circle back. When you do, these pages will still be here, meeting you with fresh eyes and open arms. You don't need to be ready. You just need to begin. There's no rush here, no right way to move through these pages. The only invitation to listen, feel, and allow. Let your own rhythm guide you. You're not alone in the unfolding. You might cry, you might smile, you might hear your own story whispering back through mine. That's not a coincidence. It's connection. It's grace. Read with a journal nearby. Read with a warm drink. Read when the house is quiet or when your spirit feels loud. Just let it be real. And when something within you shifts, if you feel your own ripple move, I would love to hear about it. Your healing matters. Your story matters. You matter. A note to the reader. While God is central to my story, I invite you to read through your own lens. This book is written with open hands and an open heart. Whether you call it God, spirit, love, or light, whether you call it prayer, meditation, divine presence, inner wisdom, synchronicities, or simple curiosity, I trust you'll find something here that speaks to your spirit. You are welcome in these pages, just as you are. May something written within these ripples stir healing and hope in your own unique journey. Foreword. I remember when I first saw Melinda. It was during morning drop-off, a time of day that's always a little chaotic, but something about her stood out. She moved like she was underwater, quiet and careful, barely making eye contact. There was a heaviness about her, like she was carrying something invisible, but immense. She'd gently kiss her children goodbye and drive away like she was on autopilot. At pickup, her face often held a look I knew too well. Tight with anxiety, like she was bracing for something no one else could see. We never exchanged more than a polite nod in those early months, but I saw her. I saw the quiet ache of someone holding it all together without feeling held. And gradually, something changed. It wasn't overnight, it wasn't loud, but slowly, her presence shifted. She began showing up, not just physically, but with light in her eyes. She smiled. She lingered. She began asking how others were doing and truly listening to the answer. Before long, she was offering help, remembering names, encouraging growth in others even as she continued growing herself. I watched as she went from surviving to living with intention, compassion, and confidence. Her transformation wasn't just external. It radiated from within, the kind that only comes from deep, honest, sometimes excruciating healing. And even more beautiful than her change was the way she began to reach back and offer her hand to others, still in the thick of it. Ripples of Healing and Hope is a story of how that transformation happened. It's a soft-spoken but powerful testimony of what healing can look like when we choose, day by day, to listen inward, to trust God, and to let ourselves be seen. If you've ever felt stuck, lost, overwhelmed, or forgotten, this book is for you. Melinda doesn't hand you a fix. She shares her ripples, and in doing so, she gives you permission to begin your own. There is so much beauty ahead. I know it, because I've seen it, ripple by ripple. I've watched this transformation with awe and reverence, from our robotic school drop-offs and silent panic to the bright presence you bring today. And now, I see clearly, the woman I was witnessing was me. This foreword is written not from a distance, but from a place of deep knowing, a tribute from the healed me to the hurting me. If you're reading this, you know this. You are in the middle of your own foreword. One day, you'll look back and you'll see how far you've come too. With admiration and love, a fellow traveler who's watched her rise. Introduction. A drop in still water. I didn't see the storm coming. Not all at once, anyway. Life has a way of unfolding slowly, until the weight becomes unbearable, and the body begins to speak what the heart can no longer hold. My storm came in layers. The devastating loss of my mother, the intensity of raising twins and a teenager, and the quiet unraveling of my own physical and mental health. Each moment chipped away at the version of me I once knew, capable, joyful, and resilient. I began to feel like I was moving through the world with no ground beneath me, just waves of grief, anxiety, and exhaustion. By early 2023, I found myself in a state I didn't recognize. I had a home I loved, a beautiful family I adored, and still something wasn't right. I was overwhelmed by anxiety I couldn't explain. I felt bone-deep fatigue that no amount of rest could fix, and I was flooded with a quiet sense of dread, unsure what was happening to me or why. At the time, I couldn't see that my body was crying out for healing. The symptoms weren't just random. They were signals, but I was too deep in survival mode to understand. Therapy helped, but it didn't heal me. I considered medication despite my own hesitations, but it left me more numb than restored. I didn't yet realize that what I needed wasn't treatment. I needed to remember who I truly was beneath the pain. My nervous system was begging for rest. My spirit was desperate to be seen. My mind was overworked, but my soul was starving. What I didn't know then, but now see so clearly, is that my body was brilliant. It wasn't failing me. It was speaking to me. It was asking me to stop, to listen, to turn inward, and reconnect with the wisdom God had placed within me from the beginning. Healing, I've learned, doesn't come crashing in like a tidal wave. It begins like a single drop in still water. A choice to breathe, to listen, to hope again. Each choice, no matter how small, sends ripples. This book is a reflection of those ripples, the practices, revelations, and sacred moments that help me return to myself and to God who never left my side. Ripples of Healing and Hope isn't a how-to guide or a checklist for fixing what's broken. It's a love letter to anyone who's ever felt overwhelmed by life's pain and are unsure of how to begin again. It's for the woman who's holding it all together for her children, while silently falling apart inside. It's for the one who wonders if their faith is enough, if healing is possible, and if joy can return after loss. Each chapter is a ripple, an offering of something that helped me find stillness in the storm. My faith, community, music, breathwork, yoga, gardening, journaling, and most of all, the unbreakable thread connecting my mind and my body. These ripples didn't fix me. They reminded me I was never truly broken. I just needed to come home to myself. My prayer is that as you read, you'll recognize your own ripples forming, that something in my story will stir hope in yours. Healing is not linear, but it's possible, and it often starts with one drop. I gathered my sorrow in trembling hands, whispers of faith like soft shifting sands. I breathed in silence, I let go of fear, and found that my Savior had always been near. One breath became rhythm, one tear became light, through roots, reflection, and echoes of night. I moved, I was still, I learned to cope, and ripple by ripple, floated in hope. Ripple 1. Sacred Surrender. Healing is like being caught in a riptide, swept into unfamiliar waters by a force you didn't see coming. Everything in you wants to resist, to swim back to what was. But the more you fight, the more exhausted you become. Surrendering to the current feels counterintuitive, but it's the only way through. This wasn't a truth I learned all at once. Time and again, life placed me in situations that stripped away my sense of control, leaving only loss, trauma, and uncertainty. Each time I fought, flailed, and tried to fix things on my own, but nothing shifted until I began to let go. Slowly, after enough moments of being carried by what I couldn't control, I saw that resistance only deepened my suffering. Surrender brought relief. That's when my faith began to take root. Quietly, brick by brick. It wasn't one grand revelation, but a series of moments where I had no choice but to trust. And over time, I realized the flailing was for nothing. God was already holding me. The divine current was never meant to drown me. It was leading me somewhere sacred. You survive a riptide not by swimming against it, but by moving with it, and healing is very much the same. It doesn't come from fighting your way out of pain. It comes from trusting that there is purpose even in the pull. I used to believe healing came through doing, by working harder, by fixing myself, controlling every outcome. But the greatest breakthroughs came when I stopped striving and allowed myself to be, to rest, to trust that God's grace was already at work, even when I couldn't see it. Surrender isn't giving up. It's opening your hands. It's saying, I don't have to carry this all alone. That simple release over time made space for peace to take root, and with peace came clarity. I could hear God more clearly, feel His nearness more deeply, not in the fixing, but in the stillness. I began to follow instead of lead, and to listen instead of force. My spirit learned to move in step with something bigger, wiser, and kinder than I had ever known. This ripple, this surrender, has changed everything. It has taught me that trust is not weakness. It's the door to true healing. Peace, when it comes, is worth every effort of letting go. Surrender doesn't always come in one moment. For me, it came slowly, layer by layer, wave by wave. It began when I found out I was pregnant again. I was already a mom, young and overwhelmed, when I had my first child at 19. That birth had been traumatic. At that time, my family was scattered and unable to be with me. I had no real knowledge of what to expect. I went into labor with fear as my companion, completely unprepared for what my body and heart were about to endure. When it ended in an emergency C-section, I was left feeling robbed of the birth I had hoped for, the strength I thought I had, and the support I so deeply needed. A decade passed, circumstances changed, then the news of twins. I was terrified. I didn't know if my body was capable of carrying or birthing 2 babies. I poured myself into preparation this time. I went to every appointment. I researched. I cared for my body with a reverence I hadn't before. My fear hadn't vanished, but I wasn't alone in it anymore. We discovered Hypnobabies, a childbirth preparation program that blends hypnosis, relaxation techniques, and positive affirmations to help women trust their bodies and release fear. Practicing it daily helped me slow down, tune inward, and open up to the idea that I could do this. It was more than a birth prep. It was the beginning of surrender. I was no longer trying to control every outcome. I was learning to trust what was growing both within and around me. I must say my husband was a grounding force throughout all of this, the calm in my panic. He researched alongside me, found the Hypnobaby tracks when I didn't know where to begin, and listened with a heart full of love. His support steadied me in ways words cannot express. But that story, our story, is the one we're saving for its own book, because it too is full of golden threads God so masterfully wove. I'd done everything I could to prepare mentally and physically. I poured myself into Hypnobabies, visualized a peaceful delivery, fueled my body with care, and centered my thoughts on trust. For the first time in my life, I entered the final days of pregnancy not with panic, but with peace. I truly believed that all my preparation would carry me through, and it did. But birth has a way of reminding you that no matter how detailed your plan, life will write its own. The day labor began, I felt ready, calm, steady. I followed all the grounding tools I had practiced, but my babies had other plans. When we arrived at the hospital, the monitor showed signs of distress in my son's heart rate. The staff immediately suggested an emergency C-section. In that moment, a quiet voice rose in me, the voice of the woman I had become, the one who knew her body, who trusted her instincts, who had done the work. I advocated for myself, asking for time, asking for my husband, who had been left in the waiting room due to COVID restrictions, to be brought back to me. The team agreed to monitor closely, and together we adjusted our sails. What followed was the most sacred experience of my life. I gave birth to twin A, Johnny, naturally. I had longed for a redemptive birth, and I got it. But right after he arrived, Lulu flipped into breech position, and the team moved swiftly to deliver her via C-section. Exactly 1 hour and 1 minute later, she made her grand entrance. It wasn't what I imagined. It was perfect in its own way. This time, I wasn't left with a heavy fog of defeat. I wasn't questioning my strength or mourning what I had missed. I was filled with awe, grateful for every moment, for both kinds of birth, and for the miracle of holding 2 healthy babies in my arms. Even in those sacred early moments of holding them, a quiet undercurrent of grief stirred within me. Life was writing another story beneath the surface, one I wasn't ready to face, yet couldn't escape. As I held the twins breathing in their newness, part of me was already mourning what might never be. I tried to push those thoughts away, but they lived in the background, trailing every milestone, echoing in every smile, in every coo. The laughter my babies might not share with their grandma, the gentle way she would have held them, the story she wouldn't get to tell. I tried to stay in the joy, to honor what was right before me, but I also knew life, like birth, doesn't always follow our plans. Just months before, at my wedding, my mother had whispered of a strange pain. We didn't know it then, but a deeper storm was beginning to swell. June 2020, on my wedding day, I still remember how she clutched her back and mentioned stomach pain. I begged her to get it checked. That's when we learned my mother had colon cancer. I tried to stay upbeat for her and for my family, but deep down I knew the truth. I was already grieving. I watched her body change, her energy fade. I accompanied her to appointments. I sat beside her through hard news and smiled when all I wanted to do was cry. Then came the next tidal wave, December 2020, my sister's diagnosis and trip to California for her brain surgery. At just 26 years old, with a young daughter depending on her, she was diagnosed with a rare and dangerous brain tumor. A paraclinoid meningioma pressing dangerously close to her optic nerve and carotid artery. The tumor demanded urgent removal, and her family was thrust into another whirlwind of fear and uncertainty. We traveled across the country to California for her brain surgery, holding on to hope with shaking hands. My mom, already fragile and declining from her own cancer, summoned a strength only a mother could understand. She needed to be there for her daughter, for her granddaughter. I will never forget her resolve, the way she fought through her own pain, just to be present, to offer comfort, to anchor us all. It wasn't about herself anymore. It was about showing up for her child, no matter the cost to her own body. Watching her do that, watching her gather every last ounce of strength just to keep mothering through the storm, broke something open in me. That moment became one of the most sacred examples of love I've ever witnessed. A mother tending to her child, even while her own light was dimming. On the very day of my sister's operation, I had learned that the pain and symptoms my mom was feeling were not just normal for her day-to-day, as she had been leading us to believe. She had been rushed to the ER. It was a bowel perforation. Suddenly both my sister and my mother were in surgery and ICU, yet I couldn't visit either due to post-COVID hospital restrictions. That day broke me. I was shaking, burning up, mentally unraveling. I barely got a phone call to my husband. He got me on the next flight home. I don't remember the airport or the plane. I was on autopilot. Carried. I like to reflect on that exact moment and remember my Nana's favorite poem, Footprints in the Sand. The poem tells of a person walking with God along a beach, seeing two sets of footprints until the hardest parts of life, where there's only one. The person asks why they were left alone in the hardest times, and God replies, "It was then that I carried you." I came home from California hollowed out, not the same woman who had left. My mother hadn't returned with me. She was still in the hospital bed across the country, fighting for her life. I had no answers, only questions that throbbed in my chest. Would she make it? Would she ever hold my babies again? Would I have to say goodbye without ever seeing her face? The world felt like it had gone still, like the tide had pulled out and left everything eerily quiet. The twins were 3 months old, tiny, needy, beautiful, and I was lost in the undertow. I moved through each day on autopilot, feeding, rocking, changing, but beneath the surface, I was sinking. My body kept going, as if instinct alone was rowing me through the storm, but my heart was somewhere else entirely. That season is mostly a blur, waves of exhaustion, flashes of babies' faces, and the constant hum of uncertainty. I was grieving the moments they might never share with her, the lullabies she wouldn't sing, the stories she wouldn't tell. I tried not to let my mind go there, but it did, painfully, over and over again. I was a mother in mourning, a daughter in limbo, a soul tossed in open waters, with nothing to cling to but desperate prayers. Now looking back, I see those days as a kind of refining, like silver in the fire. I was being stripped of everything I thought I could control. Burned to bare truth. Malachi 3:3 says, "He will sit as a refiner and purifier of silver." I've since learned that silversmith must never walk away during refining process. The silver is only ready when he can see his reflection in it. In the fire of those days, I was not abandoned. I was held, watched over, tenderly shaped. Even when I couldn't feel it, God was there, steady and near, his eyes never leaving me. And now with clarity, shaped by pain and grace, I know this much to be true. He never left my side. He was seeing me through. I believe that wholeheartedly. Those days God carried me. It is the only explanation I have for how I made it home, how I made it through. It didn't end there. Every call from the hospital, I braced to hear my mother was gone. But that call never came. My sister came home. My mom slowly improved. I lit a candle for her daily, praying, holding on. And she did. She went home to my sister. They're in recovery together. Their strained relationship healed, and something in me shifted permanently. My faith was solidified. My prayers had been answered. God, just a little more time. Please bring her home. Please see my sister through her recovery. God, please let them forgive me for leaving. One of the most tender moments the last time we sat together. Just the two of us, with the babies. Just my mom and I. It was 2 weeks before she passed, though none of us knew it yet. She'd been shopping, visiting friends, smiling. She came to me. She didn't just stop by. She stayed. She sat on the couch with me, laughed, played with the twins. We watched music videos like we used to. She wore the handmade shirt I had given her, the one that said Mama, with 3 hearts. I added one for each of her kids. I remember how light the room felt, how the babies crawled all over her, how for a few hours it was just us and the love we shared. When she stood to leave, something in me paused. I hugged her longer than usual, held her tighter. I didn't know it was goodbye, but it was like something in me did. Now I see it so clearly. That visit was sacred, not just because it was our last, but because it was whole. She was seen, loved, and honored, and so was I. Surrender doesn't mean giving up. It means letting go of what you thought it would be and allowing what is to be enough, even beautiful. Since then, my healing hasn't been linear, but it's been real. There were nights when my grief threatened to drown me, and yet somehow God would place a gentle buoy in a form of a song, a friend, a breeze, a breath. There were moments when I felt utterly empty, like there was nothing left to give. But in those very places, something new always began. A tiny ripple of hope, a sacred whisper, a reminder that even in the ashes, God is still writing beauty. My rhythm of surrender evolved from a one-time offering to a daily posture, a softened heart, open eyes, hands, and an open heart. And with that openness came something unexpected: clarity. I began to see things I used to see. The gentle ways God speaks through nature, timing, patterns, and people. It was as though surrender had wiped the fog from the lens of my soul, revealing the sacred details all around me. Being a sea bug is a gift of spiritual sight. It's catching the little winks from heaven, the ones you only notice when your soul is paying attention. Maybe it's the Holy Spirit, divine intuition, or maybe it's simply grace, but it has guided me, deepened my surrender, and reminded me that God I love doesn't show up in thunder. He shows up in the details. My aunt has always called me her sea bug. It's a name that has followed me lovingly for years. Her way of honoring how a person notices things others seem to pass by. What you see with your heart is a gift. If anyone ever tells you differently, and you don't use this gift, it will become useless. At first I thought it might mean I was just observant, sentimental maybe. But over time, I've come to realize I'm not just noticing, I'm witnessing something divine. Little moments too precise, too beautiful to be called coincidence. A huge green heart lovingly sculpted by grass and vegetation in the Puerto Rico hillside. Special numbers repeating again and again. A thought about someone instantly followed by their appearance or text. These threads, golden ones, are woven quietly into the fabric of life. Mini Ripple Challenge. Put your sea bug glasses on. At some point today or this week, be intentional about noticing what repeats, what song lyric feels perfectly timed, what creature crosses your path with uncanny meaning, what conversation opens a door in your heart. Let these signs be little ripples of connection. Don't rush to explain them. Just receive. Let them be what they are, divine reminders that you are seen, guided, and loved. When life feels uncertain or your faith feels stretched thin, return to these moments. Let them remind you God is here. God is weaving. He sees you and knows your heart. The more we notice, the more we remember that we're part of something sacred. So if the fog still lingers, be gentle with yourself. You don't have to force clarity, just allow it. Let surrender be the key that softens the edges of your vision. As your heart opens and your pace slows, trust that lens of your soul will begin to clear. You'll start to see more of the beauty tucked inside the ordinary, the timing that feels too perfect, the grace in the smallest details. Pay attention. These are the ripples. This is the light. It is meant for you. Reflection prompt. Take a quiet moment to reflect on a time in your life when you let go, whether by choice or by necessity. Was there a moment of surrender that came gently, or one that cracked you open unexpectedly? Think about what followed. Were there signs of support, coincidences that felt too perfect to ignore, or people who showed up just when you needed them? Mantra: I trust the current, knowing it's carrying me somewhere sacred. Scripture: when you pass through the waters, I will be with you, and through the rivers, they shall not overwhelm you. Isaiah 43:2. With hands opened in surrender, and the lens of my soul gently clearing, I discovered I no longer had to walk alone. Ripple 2. Quiet strength of we. Grief has a way of echoing in empty spaces. Anxiety feeds on isolation. What I didn't know then was that God was already weaving people into my path. Souls who would steady me, soften me, stretch me. Healing didn't just find me in the silence. It found me in laughter and in shared tears. Healing might begin in solitude, but it never finishes there. I learned this in the quiet of my home during the early months, when the weight of my grief and illness left me disconnected from the world. At first, I thought isolation was what I needed. Space to be still, to process, to breathe. But over time, that solitude became a cage. The silence grew heavy, and my thoughts grew louder. Anxiety fed on the stillness. I knew I had to find a way back to people, to life, to love. This ripple started not with a grand plan, but with a small, brave whisper in my heart. Find your people. And so I did. I began surrounding myself with others who reflected the light I was trying to find again. People who shared my passion, who were willing to walk with me, listen to me, build me up as I learned to build myself. I sought out friendships that felt intentional, grounding, life-giving. I made space in my life for different kinds of friends. Friends who loved to garden and could talk for hours about the soil, seeds, and the sacred rhythm of the earth. Friends who were mothers too, exhausted and overwhelmed just like me, but who showed up anyway in all our messy beauty. We leaned on each other. We reminded each other that showing up, even tired and unsure, was still showing up. That was enough. Then there were friends who believed in me before I fully believed in myself. Those who asked about the ripples, who read my words and said, "You have to write this book." The ones who held me accountable to my healing, not by pressuring me, but by encouraging me again and again to keep going. One of the most meaningful places I found this sense of sacred support was in my connection to animals. From the time I was a little girl, my heart longed for love and understanding. Pets filled that space in a way people often couldn't. They offered comfort without condition, presence without pressure. They were my confidants, my companions, my healing balm. Later in life, after we lost our elderly dog Mama, such a beloved part of our family, my heart broke in a new way. The loss was too fresh, too deep. I wasn't sure we would ever be ready, but then in the stillness, I felt a nudge. Cats. I had never been especially drawn to them before, but something in me stirred. I reached out to a dear friend who fosters cats and thought maybe, just maybe, we could help. I figured we would try fostering. If it didn't work out, at least we'd given a cat a loving home. What happened next only confirmed the divine orchestration of it all. It was around Thanksgiving, and we hadn't shared the idea with our kids, but their thankful trees from school said everything. On Lulu's, she had written my heart. On Johnny's, black cats. He didn't know about the foster opportunity. I didn't know that most of the cats from the recent hoarding case were black, but God knew. That was our sign. We brought the cats home, and they brought a new rhythm with them. A rhythm of presence, quiet companionship, healing. These little creatures became part of our sacred community, not just as pets, but soul reminders. Every time they curl up beside us, I see the threads God continues to weave, even through fur and whiskers. Community started growing like a garden in my life, not all at once, but in steady, beautiful waves. One of the most unexpected and transformative spaces where community bloomed was through Central Baptist Church. At first, it was a simple walk. The church offered outdoor gazebo services, close enough that we could walk from home with our twins in the stroller. It felt casual, safe, low pressure. We told ourselves we could turn around if we didn't feel comfortable, if the kids melted down, or if the vibe just wasn't right. But none of that happened. Instead, something sacred met us there. The messages each week were simple, but soul-stirring. The environment was peaceful and welcoming, a true reflection of God's presence without pretense. It quickly became our rhythm. The kids delighted in pointing out the tall, ornate bell tower each morning on our way to school, proudly declaring, "That's our church school." Our family was drawn to this church, as if its steeple whispered home to our hearts. During evening services, when the sun slips low and streams through the stained glass, something miraculous happens. A heart-shaped glow, soft and celestial, appears on the sanctuary wall, as though God himself is leaving a gentle signature. In those moments, surrounded by light and message, we are reminded that we are seen, we are loved, and we are exactly where we're meant to be. This church, those services, planted something deep in me. It's where I learned from our pastor that polished prayers or perfect words are not needed to speak with God. I could show up in my grief, my fatigue, my anxiety, and he would meet me with grace. But it was in those early Sunday morning skies, surrounded by a quiet and humble community, that I began to understand prayer as a living, breathing conversation. God is listening to every cry, every whisper, every moment of silence. As grief hollowed me out, I began to find pieces of myself in the act of giving, of pouring into others the kind of love I had so desperately longed to receive. To be seen, held, and loved without expectation. It was not easy. As humans, we often give with the invisible strings attached, hoping for recognition, reciprocity, relief. But this time, it was different. My giving wasn't transactional. It was survival. It was sacred, a way to honor the love I had lost by becoming a vessel for it. I began volunteering with the church, helping with events, showing up for activities, finding purpose in the ways I could give, even when I felt I had little left. But I did have something to give. My heart, my hands, my presence. I started attending weekly step groups. These weren't your typical support groups. They were sacred circles of people from different walks of life and faith, sitting together, reading scripture, and reflecting on what God was revealing to each of us. No two reflections were ever the same, and that was the beauty of it. We weren't there to preach or perfect. We were there to witness each other's walk. That humbled me, healed me, held me. These connections, big and small, made me want to leave my house again, made me feel alive again. They made me remember that healing wasn't just about what I was receiving. It was about what I was sharing. Losing my mom was the most devastating moment of my life, but one thing stayed with me, echoing in every conversation I had at her memorial. In every story someone shared about her, she made people feel love. She made people feel seen. She made people laugh and feel lighter just by being herself. That's what I want to. That's what I pray my life will reflect. As I sat surrounded by the many hearts who had gathered in her honor, I felt the hush of something sacred. Grief had thinned the veil between what was and what is. And though I felt hollow, I wasn't alone. My we was holding me, both seen and unseen. I often reflect on the place that held me so tenderly before the unraveling began. My job at the senior center was another way I had been gently prepared. It was a job that didn't feel like a job at all. Looking back, I can see how gently I was placed exactly where I needed to be, even before the storm clouds gathered. At the time, I wouldn't have called it preparation, but I absolutely knew I had stepped into something sacred. Working at the senior center became one of the most formative seasons of my life. I was blessed with the most amazing boss a girl could ask for. Someone who saw me, built me up, and became a guiding light on my path. Her leadership wasn't just managerial. It was maternal, empowering, and full of grace. The way she nurtured my strengths still brings tears to my eyes. I carry deep gratitude for those years we spent together, and the seniors, the beautiful souls I came to know and cherish. They became like family to me. I was surrounded each day by stories that stretched across generations, by wisdom that could not be taught in books, and by love that knew how to sit still, listen, and see. I loved walking in each morning, knowing that I would have one-on-one moments that mattered. Each interaction held something unique and holy. In their presence, I was being softened. Without knowing it, I was being wrapped in a blanket of grace that would hold me when everything else fell apart. When my mother passed, those very same seniors, my angels in disguise, rallied around me. They grieved with me. They held space for me. They reminded me, simply by being who they were, that love endures. To this day, I still hold them in my heart. That season gave me a sense of belonging I've never quite found again. And now, as I continue to heal and feel the light returning, I know I must hold that longing gently, trusting that when the time is right, another door will open, one that feels just as aligned, just as sacred. I didn't know that the love I was receiving, the wisdom I was absorbing, the presence I was practicing daily would become lifelines. When the unraveling began, when my mother's illness shook the ground beneath me, I was already held, already surrounded, already softened. I didn't know then that God was placing that opportunity and those people in my life to soften me for what was coming, but He was, and I see so clearly now. That season, that place, that we was another ripple of quiet strength that steadied me when the storm came. I hope my efforts, reaching out, planting seeds, Showing up shows my heart just as those have for me, because community isn't just a side note in healing. It is a sacred ripple, one that keeps expanding with every act of love, every shared tear, every honest conversation. Healing became possible when I realized I didn't have to do it alone, and neither do you. Reflection prompt. Who has shown up for you in your hardest moments, human or even animal? Reflect on a time when someone or something offered unexpected comfort or companionship. How has your sense of community deepened through pain? Blessing. May you be surrounded by hearts that see you, souls that sit beside you, and voices that speak life over your weary places. May the hands that hold you be both human and divine, a neighbor's kindness, a child's laughter, or the quiet presence of fur against your chest. May you be reminded that healing doesn't ask you to go it alone. It gently invites you to lean, to trust, to receive. And if your circle feels small today, may one open door, one soft nudge, or one unexpected gesture whisper that you are never truly alone. May the love of friends ground you, the embrace of family steady you, and the gaze of a loyal animal remind you you are worthy of care, comfort, and belonging. May you find sacred soil beneath your feet and companions of all kinds along the way. Once my heart was held by others, I learned that my body too needed a soft place to land. Ripple 3. Soft and strong, still and supported. It started simply, just a few stretches on my living room floor. No formal class, no instructor guiding me, just me and the quiet ache in my body. My shoulders carried grief, my hips stored anxiety, and my breath, when I noticed it at all, was shallow, tight, and restrained. I had been surviving for so long, disconnected from the vessel that carried me, but something shifted when I chose to pause and listen. Something had to change. Yoga entered gently, like an invitation. With each pose, I felt layers begin to peel away. Not just tension, but fear, numbness, and exhaustion. It wasn't about getting the pose right. It was about showing up. About surrendering to stillness. About discovering that movement could be medicine. Each inhale became a moment of grace. Each exhale, a quiet release. The mat became a sanctuary, not for striving, but for coming home. As I built my inner strength, I began to build my external community. What started as solitary practice on my living room floor became something deeper when I was introduced to 2 local studios that together offered me a space to heal wholly. The classes at Alchemy House of Yoga and Snake and Twist Pilates were held in different places, yet their rhythms seemed to blend seamlessly. One provided deep stillness, the other precise strength. Together they strengthened and softened me in perfect balance. I'd found places where my body felt safe, seen, and held. I was meant to be here. I deserved to be here. Initially, I hesitated. Money had always been tight, and prioritizing myself felt foreign. But a dear friend encouraged me to join her in taking a class, reminding me that time and resources spent on my healing are never wasted. They are priceless. I tried a few welcome rate classes. When those special rates ended, I felt a sense of grief creeping in. Could I really keep showing up for myself in this way? And then I received a gift I never expected. Alchemy House announced a contest. Attend 15 classes in 1 month and be entered to win a full year of free yoga. I poured myself into that month, attending class almost every single day, sometimes twice a day, moved by something deeper than the possibility of winning. I didn't just meet the goal, I gave myself entirely to the process. The day of the drawing arrived. I told myself to stay grounded, not to hope too much. That evening, sitting with my children and our fur family, the phone rang. It was the studio owner. "Guess what?" she said. I had won. I couldn't breathe for a moment. Gratitude doesn't even begin to capture what I felt. Alchemy House had already given me so much. Even if I had only walked away with the music playlists that had accompanied my healing. Hearing from the community I was growing into that I was worthy of this blessing moved something deep inside me. Classmates came to me with congratulations. One woman said she had prayed it would be me, and that she and her daughter had celebrated as if they themselves won. In their joy, I felt seen and deeply supported. It was one of the most healing affirmations I'd ever received. I am also endlessly grateful to Snake and Twist. Their classes meet me where I am and work with me so I can continue to support my body. Pilates has become an incredible part of my practice. It incorporates breath work through the challenge, cultivates inner strength, and brings me back into alignment, both physically and emotionally. Many of the days when I would practice yoga in the morning, easing into stillness and soft expansion, then I'd arrive at Pilates that same evening, only to find that the sequences being taught echoed the same intentions, the same muscle groups, even the same breath patterns. I felt like the instructors were divinely in tune with one another, even without a word, as if the universe was coordinating the healing from two different directions, and I simply had to show up to receive it. While yoga welcomed me into surrender and deep internal listening, Pilates offered me the structure to rebuild. Where yoga opened me, Pilates aligned me. Where yoga soothed me, Pilates strengthened. Yoga allowed me to be soft. Pilates taught me how to hold steady. The two together created rhythm of resilience that I hadn't known I needed. One that cradled the nervous system while reawakening the core of my being. Pilates offered invitations to move with control, to activate muscles that had long been dormant or disconnected. I learned to stabilize from within, to carry myself with new awareness, to feel my strength returning in quiet, foundational ways. It wasn't about looking a certain way. It was about feeling safe and powerful in my own body again. Yoga was my surrender. Pilates was my structure. Yoga asked me to soften. Pilates taught me to engage. Both were essential. Both were sacred. In a body that had been through trauma, birth, and deep grief, I needed both the gentle undoing and the intentional rebuilding. I leave each session walking taller, breathing deeper, and feeling more like myself. And the most remarkable part? These spaces of healing are both just 10-minute walk from my home. God placed us in this town, on this street, not by accident. I see how divine timing and location wove together to bring me exactly where I needed to be, not only to raise my family, but to raise myself back into wholeness. That kind of alignment doesn't just feel accidental. It feels appointed, like something placed with intention long before I arrived. Atlantic Highlands holds a quiet kind of magic, something you don't just see, but feel. Cradled between the wooded hills and the stretch of Sandy Hook Bay, it's home to the highest natural elevation on the eastern seaboard, south of Maine. Maybe that's why it feels like it offers a higher perspective, not just geographically, but spiritually. It's a town that watches over the water, and somehow watches over you too. In the off-season, when the shore town quiets down and the tourists drift away, the streets seem to exhale into a soft stillness. First Avenue glows gently with the warmth of lamplight spilling onto the brick buildings and sidewalks. Beautiful storefronts stand like old friends, timeless and welcoming. There's reverence in the hush of winter nights here, where there isn't a single soul on the streets, and one that invites reflection. Walking home from an evening class, salt air on my skin, and stars overhead, I often feel like I'm moving through a story half written, carried by a town that knows how to hold silence. When summer comes, Atlantic Highlands transforms into celebration. The marina dances with sailboats and ferries bringing life and laughter from Manhattan, and the sidewalks bloom with the sounds of music, clinking glasses, and stories unfolding beneath string lights. It's not chaotic, but communal, alive in a way that says, we're all in this together. I love both seasons, the meditative calm and the spirited pulse. They reflect the rhythm I've come to know in myself, one part stillness, one part joy. Raising my family here feels like a blessing wrapped in time. My great-grandfather, a merchant marine, once walked these very docks. He sailed these waters, brought stories home on the tide, and found rest in the bay shore. Sometimes I wonder if in some mysterious way, if his footsteps led mine, if the echo of his life here is part of what makes this place feel so deeply like home. There's history in these hills, built by shipbuilders, dreamers, and hands like his. It's poetic that I get to walk these same streets, building something of my own, a life stitched with healing, motherhood, faith, and movement. Every class, every walk in town, every gazebo service, and sunset over the bay feels like a whisper from God, from my ancestors, from the land itself. You are held. You are home. In the early days of trauma recovery, I hadn't realized how much I was holding in. Not just tears, but breath. I was always bracing for another wave of grief, another difficult day of parenting, another internal storm. Breathwork taught me that healing begins with presence, that peace doesn't come after the chaos, it begins within the pause inside it. One exercise suggested gently by therapists and often implemented by my instructors became an anchor. Inhale for 4, hold for 4, exhale for 6. I started there. It calmed my nervous system, softened my racing thoughts, and opened up a new space within me, one where I could rest. It was during this slow return to my body that a particular yoga instructor would leave a lasting imprint on my healing. She introduced me to yin yoga with a trauma-informed approach. Yin is a deeply restorative form of yoga that focuses on long, passive holds and stillness. Unlike more dynamic styles, yin invites you to settle into each pose for several minutes, allowing your fascia, the connective tissues in your body, to gently release, soften, and open. But what yin really gave me was permission to slow down. In that quiet, supported space, I wasn't pushing or performing. I was receiving. I learned how trauma lives in the body, tucked into joints and tension, and how healing can begin when we create space to feel and release it gently with compassion. She never forced. She offered. She reminded us that our practice was our own, that we could adjust, pause, or simply lie on the mat and breathe if that's what we needed. That level of autonomy was revolutionary for someone like me, who had spent years in survival mode, doing what was needed and expected without tuning into what I truly needed for myself. Trauma-informed yoga helped me unlearn the belief that healing had to hurt or be earned. It showed me that recovery is in softness, that safety can be rebuilt one breath at a time, and that it is okay, more than okay, to be still. What I didn't understand at the time was it was exactly what I needed. My nervous system had been living in a constant state of fight or flight. For so long, I thought I was simply anxious, easily overwhelmed, or overly sensitive. But underneath it all, my body had become stuck in survival mode. It did the only thing it could to cope. A completely normal response, an example of what can happen in grief and profound loss. It rewired me, prioritizing protection over presence. Slowing down helped me see this pattern. My breathing was shallow. It wasn't until I began tuning into the subtle signals, tight shoulders and chest, clenched jaw, rapid heartbeat, that I realized my body wasn't just responding to the present. It was holding the weight of everything I hadn't been able to fully process. I remember one night in particular, the air thick with warning. A tornado alert blared from every phone, startling me into full panic. I hadn't been sleeping well for months, and this night was no different. I lay frozen beside my husband, not wanting to wake him or burden him with my fear. Some part of me knew we were likely safe, that the storm might pass, but my body didn't know. My mind didn't care. All I could feel was dread, as if the tornado was already overhead, as if the roof might peel away and take everything with it. I laid there wide-eyed, in the dark, flooded with symptoms I couldn't explain. Racing heart, shaking limbs, dry mouth, shallow breath. I was paralyzed, praying the tornado wouldn't hit us, but deeper down, praying that I wasn't about to lose someone else, or everything. Eventually, exhaustion overtook me, and I passed out, but that moment never left me. It was the night I realized how much fear was under the surface, how my nervous system had become a vault of unspoken loss and anticipated tragedy. I had lost so much, so suddenly, that all I could see was the possibility of more disaster, more unraveling. It wasn't because I wanted to live in fear. It was because my mind and body had gone into survival mode, scanning constantly for the next loss. Somewhere deep within me, a part of me was waiting, bracing for another shoe to drop. And when you've already lost so much, that fear feels logical, even responsible. My nervous system wasn't malfunctioning. It was doing exactly what it thought it needed to do to protect me. Once I started practicing intentional breath work and somatic movement, a shift began. Not dramatic or immediate, but gentle and real. I could feel when something was helping me regulate, and when something was pushing me further into dysregulation. Breath became the first tool, the bridge. It grounded me in moments of spiraling. I learned that my symptoms, fatigue, dizziness, brain fog, even digestive issues, weren't just random. They were all messages from a brilliant, overworked nervous system, begging to be heard. Learning to pause, to breathe deeply, to move with care. It wasn't just healing. It was remembering. Remembering what safety felt like in my body. My nervous system began to settle in a way it never had before. Then there were sound bowls. The first time I experienced them, I wasn't expecting much. But the moment the first vibration rang through the room, my mind went silent. Truly silent for the first time in what felt like forever. It wasn't a numbing silence, but a spacious one, a sacred clearing. Frequencies moved through my body and swept away the noise in my head like a wave washing over sand. I remember lying there, eyes closed, tears slipping down my cheeks, not because I was sad, but because I was still. Now sound bowls have become a part of my personal practice. On nights when sleep feels far away, or when intrusive thoughts refuse to quiet, I turn to their resonance. The tones lull me into a rest, not just physically, but mentally and spiritually. It's as if my body recognizes the vibration and says, yes, this is safe. You can let go now. The connection between breath and movement and sound became my sacred rhythm. I found my way back to my body through this rhythm, through child's pose, plank holds, through slow exhales and tiny shakes, through resonant waves of sound that quieted my racing mind. And yes, there was music, always softly in the background, the kind that nourished, not overstimulated. Many of the songs I would come to love and lean on were first heard in the sacred hush of a yoga class. They were not just beautiful, they were reminders, gentle companions to my breath and movement. In this ripple, music was a thread, not the tapestry. What mattered most was the way breath, body, and spirit began to dance together. The way I stopped abandoning myself in hard moments and started staying. Showing up on the mat, even on the hard days, became a promise to myself. I am worth this care. I am allowed to feel good again. I can be soft and strong. I can be still and supported. In those quiet moments of movement, breath, and vibration, I met God again, not in words, but in awareness. In the sacred pause at the beginning of class, when we are invited to set an intention, I take that moment to pray, to thank Him, to speak what's on my heart. My go-to prayer often rises gently. God, thank you for opening my heart to what is for me and closing it to what is not. In those silent spaces, I offer my gratitude, my fear, and my hopes. That dialogue with God grounds me before I move a muscle. His presence becomes the thread that holds the entire practice together. He's with me in every trembling hold, every surrendered stretch, every resonant tone, always reminding me that healing doesn't arrive all at once. Ripple by ripple, breath by breath, I return to myself. Reflection prompt. Where in your life have you hesitated to invest in your healing or your joy? Who has helped remind you that you are worth showing up for? How might breath or movement guide you gently back today? Mantra. My body is a vessel of healing. I move with love. I live in awareness. I rest in sound. As posture and breath returned me to stillness, a new current began to flow. One carried on melody. Ripple 4. Music as medicine. There were moments I didn't have the words. Grief had silenced my voice, and exhaustion dulled even the thoughts in my head. But somehow music spoke for me. Long before I could name what I was feeling, loss, loneliness, overwhelm, a song would start, and my soul would stir. A familiar melody, a lyric that felt like a prayer, the hum of harmonies that reached past the noise in my mind. It was as if God himself used music to bypass my defenses and wrap me in his comfort. Music became my sanctuary when the world felt loud and unforgiving. Worship songs turned into lifelines. The days I couldn't pray, I played. When I couldn't cry, a song would draw the tears out of me gently, without shame. 3 songs in particular held space for my soul in different seasons of this journey. Flowers by Melinda Eve Rivera reminded me that beauty can still blossom from broken ground. It helped me see that nothing in my story was wasted, not even the pain. Every tear, every quiet surrender was watering something sacred. Quiet by Hillside Recording, sung by Diana Trout, became my breath when I felt overwhelmed. It led me into stillness, where I could hear the whisper of God's presence and know that I didn't have to strive, just be held. His Daughter by Molly Kate Kestner held a deep personal meaning for me as a mother. The song speaks to a young woman who through pain and loss ultimately finds healing through the love of her child and the love of God. It reminded me of my own story as a young mom, holding my firstborn son in my arms, realizing that his love was saving me. I was lost, struggling to find my way, and yet my son's love became a beacon of hope and restoration, like the woman in the song who prayed to God for help. I too reached out in desperation. There was a time when I thought healing had to be hard work, but music reminded me that healing can also be beauty. It can be a rhythm you sway to in the kitchen, a lyric that unlocks a long-buried memory, or a simple chorus that quiets your racing heart. Some songs became soundtracks to my survival. Others were background noise that softened the edges of an anxious day. I began creating intentional playlists, one for mornings when I needed courage, one for nights when I needed peace, one just for worship when I wanted to praise through the pain. But the real magic happened in those moments when a song would rise above the rest, when a simple lyric or melody would touch me so deeply that it felt like the music wasn't just playing, but speaking directly to my soul. Those were the moments that would leave me with goosebumps. Music was not just noise or distraction, it was a message, a divine connection between my heart and the rhythm of God's grace. It's in those moments when a chord progression swells or a voice hits just the right note that my heart aligns with something much bigger than myself. I'll feel the familiar chill of goosebumps running down my arms, and I know, without a doubt, that I'm not just hearing the music. I'm receiving it. It's as if that song was meant for this very moment, for this place in my journey, to remind me that I'm seen, I'm heard, and I'm not alone. I've learned that these goosebumps aren't just physical. They are spiritual markers. They are God's subtle way of reminding me that He is present. He is speaking to me through the language of music. It's a sign that my heart is aligned with something divine, something sacred, something beyond the everyday noise. When I feel those goosebumps, I understand that the song is no longer for entertainment. It's for healing. It's God's way of showing me that in the midst of my struggle, I am being held. Those moments of connection, of peace and clarity are not accidents. They are divine appointments where music becomes a vessel for the love and grace that flow from God. One of the most unforgettable moments of divine musical connection came after our mother passed. I had taken my sister to the funeral home to see her, and then faced the long, lonely drive back home late at night. I don't remember the route. I don't remember the specifics of the drive. I only remember the wrong turns and the tears. Somewhere along the way, I pulled over, completely overwhelmed. I turned on my GPS, then the radio. That's when it started. The first song that played was Ghost by Justin Bieber, and it hit me like a ton of bricks. One by one, every song that followed felt like a conversation with my mom. I cried through each one, eventually saying out loud, "Okay, Mom, I'm crying, I get it. I need to cry." After 6 painfully perfect songs, I pleaded with her in the silence between the tracks. "Please just play something upbeat." And the next song that came on was exactly that. A happy tune only she and I would have shared in joy. I laughed through my tears, stunned by the intimacy of it all. It was her. It was us. Our connection was still alive. When I finally reached home, I pulled into the driveway, with my eyes burning, my heart strangely light. That's when Bye 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 started playing. It was the perfect ending. I sat in the car, letting the song finish, wanting to feel her for just one more moment. The music had held me all the way home. It's not just during emotional car rides that I feel this divine exchange through music. Even in my yoga practice, the music and the tone often feel like a response, gentle, affirming, and divinely timed for what I need that day. Music has carried me, taught me, and wrapped around me in moments I didn't think I could keep going. And somehow, through each melody, I've been reminded that I was never going through any of it alone. Before music carried me through grief, it carried me through life with her. Music was my mother and I, side by side, volume up, windows down, singing like no one was listening. Whether it was quick morning coffee runs or 16-hour hauls to Florida. Music was always our constant, our pulse. It wasn't just background noise. It was the atmosphere of our love. We sang it all: rock and roll, reggaeton, hip-hop, R&B, dance hall, country, Motown, old crooners from the 40s and 50s. If it had soul, rhythm, or a story to tell, we were in. Our playlists had no limits, just like her love, wide open, joyful, and real. She'd belt out lyrics totally unfiltered, laughing when she missed a beat, carefree in a way that made me feel like everything was okay. And somehow, it was. In those moments, life felt full. But music wasn't only where we found joy. It was also where we gave ourselves permission to feel, to cry, to break open in the presence of each other. I remember playing His Daughter by Molly Kate Kastner for her. The lyrics struck something deep in both of us. We sat there in tears, quiet but raw, letting the music say the things that our voices couldn't. I think we both saw the reflections of our story in those verses, mother and daughter, walking through pain, anchored in love. And when my husband shared our wedding song with her, Marry Your Daughter by Brian McKnight Jr., it was more than gesture. It was a moment of reverence, of connection, of passing the torch. She wept, not because she was sad, but because it meant something to see me loved so fully. Music made that moment sacred. For us, music was never just something we listened to. It was how we spoke. It was how we felt, truly and deeply to our core. Some people bond over hobbies or habits, but we bonded over playlists. It wasn't just the two of us. My mother had her own soundtrack. Loud, wild, and unforgettable. She would tell me stories of going to Woodstock, of dancing with her friends in the sun, covered in dust and joy and other questionable things. She was a rocker at heart. Ozzy Osbourne, Marilyn Manson, belting Alanis Morissette from rooftops in Belmar, they weren't just names to her. They weren't just songs. They were airs of freedom. She never outgrew her love for live music. Even in more recent years, she danced and sang through a Pitbull and Mark Anthony concert like a teenager again. One of my favorite memories. My mom, my husband, and I all together, seeing Disturbed play live. The bass vibrating through the ground, hands in the air, head banging, lyrics flying, her eyes lit up. It was electric. She was electric. Music and movement was our sacred ritual. Those days were magic. Music echoing under open skies, bodies swaying in rhythm, getting silly in the car, her face always lit up with happiness. It didn't matter who was on play. We were always present, always together, always connected through song. When I look back now, I realize music was our happy place. It held our moods, our memories, our milestones. And after she passed, I think that's why the silence felt so unbearable at first. Because music wasn't just something we enjoyed. It was a language. It was home. Maybe that's why music still feels like a portal. Like when a certain beat hits, she's riding shotgun again. When the lyric matches the ache in my chest, it's because we've been here before, together. Even now, when I need her most, I turn on a song and I feel her singing beside me. It's not just memory, it's presence. Our love was never quiet. It had a soundtrack, and somehow it still plays on. I'll be honest, this chapter was the one I cried the hardest while writing. Each memory carried melody and ache in equal measure. Some tears were for her absence, others for the joy we shared that still echoes so loud in my heart. Writing it felt like singing a duet with a voice I still hear in the background of everything. And maybe that's the most honest thing I can say about grief. It doesn't silence the music. It just changes how you hear it. Music as medicine? Of course it is. It doesn't ask questions or offer advice. It meets you exactly where you are and somehow lifts you, even if only slightly. It's a universal language that speaks not just to us, but through us. No translation required. You don't need to understand every word, or even any at all. A violin weeping, a drum pulsing, a voice trembling. It's all story. And the beauty is, we each get to write our own meaning into the same melody. For me, music stitched together the torn pieces. It reminded me I was alive when I felt hollow. It gave me rhythm when my steps were uncertain. It gave me company when I felt alone. And in its mysterious, miraculous way, it gave me hope. A verse that's become a promise to me that God is not just near, but rejoicing over me in song. And in that knowledge I rest. The Lord your God is with you, the mighty warrior who saves. He will take great delight in you. In his love, he will no longer rebuke you, but will rejoice over you with singing. Zephaniah 3:17. Reflection prompt. Think back to a moment when a song gave you goosebumps or stopped you in your tracks. What was the message you felt at that moment? How did it connect to your journey? Let that song be a reminder of the moments of connection, conversation, or when God reached you through the power of music. Mantra. I am held in harmony. God sings over me as I heal. The song that soothed my soul led me to seek healing in the silence of the soil. Ripple 5. Growing grounded. There's something healing about dirt under your nails. In a season when so much felt out of my control, my emotions, my body, my energy, gardening brought me back to a rhythm I didn't know I was craving. It reminded me that growth is slow, sacred, and often unseen. I didn't start with a big plan, just a few pots, a few seeds, and a small corner of earth. But with every handful of soil, every tug of a stubborn weed, I felt a part of myself waking up. I was doing more than gardening. I was tending to my own healing. 15 minutes in the garden would pass in what felt like seconds. A quick check of the tomatoes would be an hour lost in peace. There's something about being surrounded by growing things that shifts the way time moves. Even just sitting, observing the pollinators as they go about their quiet work, felt like a balm. The bees, butterflies, and birds aren't loud about their importance, but without them, nothing would flourish. Their dance, though small and unassuming, is essential. Watching them reminded me that sometimes the most important healing is quiet and unseen. He cuts off every branch in me that bears no fruit, while every branch that does bear fruit he prunes, so that it will be even more fruitful. John 15:2. That single verse began to take root in my spirit the more I worked with my plants. I saw firsthand how cutting back the vines, even the ones that looked strong, was not loss, but love. Pruning wasn't punishment, it was provision. It made space for new life to thrive. I began to see the same principle in my own life, the relationships, routines, and beliefs I had to cut back weren't failures. They were the making of my fruitfulness. Planting, I've come to realize, is in my blood. Some of my fondest childhood memories were formed among the flowers and greenery. I can still close my eyes and smell the soothing, clean scent of eucalyptus from my grandmother's florist shop, the way it wrapped around the room in its silvery green, lightly citrus, comforting hug. It was a space of creativity and care, beauty and intention. I also grew up seeing and hearing stories of my great-grandfather's gardens and how he tended faithfully year after year. How he always said, flowers mean love. And he was so right. My happiness blooms with the flowers unfolding gently in the warmth of early summer. It is one of my greatest honors to pass this connection to my own children. There is something deeply special about watching their small hands water roots, tug at weeds, or light up with joy as we harvest together. Their awe breathes new life into my own. The garden has become more than a healing place for me. It's a sacred classroom where we grow together, not just food, but patience, care, and reverence. My husband is often the unsuspecting witness of my loud, squeaky celebrations when I discover the first sprout breaking through the soil. I live for those moments, the wild delight of seeing life take form. I live to grow food for our family and to keep learning the powerful and ancient wisdom of herbs, their uses, their benefits, their place in our everyday wellness. It fascinates me how every seed holds a unique design, how each one needs something different to thrive. Some crave shade, others full sun. Some flourish beside specific companions, while others falter when planted too close together. And isn't that just like us? We grow best in the right conditions. We bloom in the presence of people who nourish and support us. And we wither when we're placed in environments that steal our light or stunt our growth. The garden is always teaching me about myself, about others, and about what it means to truly flourish. One of the deepest lessons the garden has gifted me is the grace of waiting. In a world obsessed with instant gratification, I step into this space and plant with the knowledge that I may not see fruit for years. Asparagus, artichokes, rhubarb, berry bushes, fruit trees, they all take time to establish deep roots before producing anything you can harvest. Some may not bear fruit until their third or even fifth year, but when the time finally comes, the fruit is all the sweeter, not just for its taste, but for the story it carries. The unseen seasons of tending, trusting, and toiling beneath the surface make the moment of flourishing sacred. This patient rhythm has reshaped me. It's taught me that delayed fruit doesn't mean failure. It means foundation. Slow work is the soul work. Waiting with intention is not passive. It's powerful. It's where hope grows quietly, where endurance stretches deep, and where we learn that becoming is often more important than arriving. Healing, too, is like this. Slow, seasonal, sometimes hidden, but always holy. There's a quiet wisdom in how plants grow. They don't rush or compare. They reach for the sun when they're ready. They trust the process. Root first, bloom later. I began to wonder, what if I offered myself that same kind of grace? Working in the soil taught me something else too, something ancient and mysterious. Handling seeds and dirt may actually communicate with the body. There's a belief that when your skin interacts with the soil and seeds, it sends signals about what your body uniquely needs. It's as if creation itself is in a conversation with you, tailoring nourishment to your individual well-being. The food I grew didn't just nurture my body, it healed parts of my soul. A sun-warmed tomato, a handful of herbs, a bowl of greens that I had grown with my own hands, they fed more than hunger. They fed my spirit. Each bite felt like a gift, a reminder that I could grow something good, something whole, something that would nourish not just me, but the people that I love. Pruning and cutting away taught me grace. I learned cutting back the vines, though it felt counterintuitive, was actually how the plant would thrive. It allows light to reach deeper, fruit to ripen, and energy to focus. It's the same with our lives. Sometimes growth looks like release. Being in the garden made me breathe differently, slower, deeper. I notice the way the air feels on my skin, the way my body softens as I move. I begin to understand the connection between tending to the land and tending to my soul. Gardening became a moving prayer, a conversation with God I didn't need words for. On the hardest days, I could step outside barefoot and feel the ground hold me. I could dig, plant, water, and release whatever I was carrying. The garden never asked me to be anything but present. This sacred tending, this rhythm of sowing, weeding, pruning, and waiting began to teach me how to care for my inner life too. I started to ask, what in me needs to be pruned? What is crowding my light? Where am I pouring energy into dead limbs instead of fruitful ones? There were beliefs, relationships, and old versions of myself I had clung to for safety, but in truth, they were blocking the sun. They had grown wild around my spirit. Cutting them back felt brutal at first, but in that removal, I found space, light, breath. I realized that pruning is trust. Trust that letting go will make room for deeper roots and fuller blooms. That even in loss, life is forming. I began to tend to my soul the same way I tend to the garden, with gentle curiosity and care, watering what's real, clearing what no longer serves. This mindset became a sanctuary, a place where my nervous system could unwind, where I could remember I was part of something bigger, older, and deeply rooted. Watching something I planted begin to grow reminded me that healing was happening in me too. It might not always be visible, but beneath the surface, new life was taking shape. Every flower, every vine, every tomato ripening in the sun felt like a whisper from God. You're healing too. The garden is one place on this earth where I feel I'm meant to be. It holds me, gently and honestly, and offers lessons I didn't even know I needed. Just as the seasons turn, so do we. There's a time to plant, a time to prune, and a time to harvest. There are things I had to let go, things I've had to water with tears. But the garden reminds me, life keeps blooming. Reflection prompt. Think about a time in your life when you felt pruned, when something was cut away, shifted, or lost. What grew in its place? Reflect on the seasons of your life. Where are you now? In planting, pruning, resting, or blooming? What is one small seed you can plant today? An act of care, a habit, or a prayer that may grow into healing in time. Blessing. May your hands remember the sacred work of tending, and your heart rest in the knowing that slow growth is still growth. May the seeds you plant in faith, even in weary soil, take root and rise in due time. May you trust the pruning seasons as grace, not punishment. May the fruit that follows surprise you with its abundance. And when the world feels too fast or too heavy, may the ground beneath you offer its steady, silent wisdom. You are growing. You are held. You are never alone. Tending roots in the earth reminded me how stories take root in the heart. Ripple 6. Healing between the lines. Long before the storm had a name, the pages found me. Books became soft places to land, lighthouses in the fog. With each chapter, I borrowed courage. With each sentence, I remembered something steady within me. What looked like stories on a shelf became sacred companions, planting wisdom I'd later cling to when the waves came. There's a kind of healing that happens when you read the right words at the right time, not because they fix you, but because they see you. Before I ever understood the healing power of the written word, I witnessed it, quietly, tenderly, through my mother. My love for reading didn't start in a classroom or library. It started in the quiet corners of our home, where my mother's books lined shelves like hidden treasure. She loved Stephen King, the thick, weathered books with cracked spines and eerie covers that seemed to whisper stories before you opened them. I could still picture her curled up with one of those novels, fully absorbed, the world around her dissolving into whatever strange town or haunted mind he had created. There was something magnetic about it. Watching her read felt like witnessing a kind of magic. Like she had found a portal, and if I followed closely enough, I might find it too. I wasn't quite ready for Stephen King's twisted worlds back then, but I wanted to read alongside her. So I found my own kind of magic in the Goosebumps series. I devoured them one after another, each book a mix of spooky suspense and kid-sized courage. I still remember the thrill of cracking open a new one, the way the covers practically dared you to read them in the dark. Sometimes I'd read them aloud to my sister. We'd curl up in bed together or hide under a blanket with a flashlight, turning the pages like we were on a mission. I'd make the scary parts extra dramatic, just enough to make her squeal and laugh. It became our own ritual, our version of adventure, a shared story, a sacred pause in the chaos of the world. Looking back, those moments weren't just about the stories. They were about belonging. We were entering new worlds together, making memories inside the folds of fiction. Through those readings, I learned that books weren't just for escape. They were for bonding, for creating safe spaces where imaginations could run wild and hearts could feel held. On quieter days, I'd switch gears and curl up with the Babysitters Club. Those stories offered comfort, friendship, and the sweet, ordinary adventures of girlhood. Through those pages, I found a different kind of escape, a window into connection, loyalty, and growing up. Still, I'd often glance at my mom's books, lined up like elders on the shelf. I knew I'd get there someday. That day would come when I'd crack open one of those thick novels and be ready to feel what she felt. And eventually I did. I think that's when it truly began for me. Not just the act of reading, but the reverence for what a book can hold. Mystery, escape, emotion, truth. My mother taught me that. Not through lessons, but through presence, through the quiet power of a woman with a novel in her hands and a whole world unfolding in her mind. Those early moments made books feel like more than entertainment. They were inheritance. They were legacy. They were love in the form of story. Eventually, life stopped being so gentle, so carefree. It would break me open in ways I couldn't yet imagine. But when it did, I had something to return to. The echoes of comfort, pieces of wisdom, anchors of stories that had been woven into me long before I needed them, and the knowledge that they were always a lifeline and a temporary escape from the harsh realities of this life. I marvel at how healing started its quiet work in me before I even realized I would need it. What else can I call it but God's grace? It began with a nudge, an almost imperceptible longing to read, not just to escape, but to fill, to nourish. I was drawn to stories, truths, voices that would anchor me long before I understood what they were preparing me for. God was gently guiding me toward a wellspring of strength I'd soon need. One of the first books I felt called to read was The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. It was May 2019, almost a year before the storm came crashing. At the time, nothing in particular was wrong, but something in me stirred. The book had been published in 1997, yet suddenly, over 2 decades later, it called to me with urgency and warmth, like a gentle nudge from something wiser than I could understand. I had no idea why it called to me then, but it did. This book taught me the life-changing gift of presence, the ability to root myself in the now, to resist the spiral of anxious thoughts, and to find peace even in the pain. Time isn't precious at all, because it is an illusion. What you perceive as precious is not time, but the one point that is out of time, the now. That is precious indeed. Eckhart Tolle's wisdom reshaped my understanding of presence in this passage. Around that time, I took a photo that has never left me. Inspired by that quote and the peace that stirred in me, I stepped outside and captured an image of a dandelion puff floating in stillness. In the background, a soft blur, my mother's home just next door. That moment, suspended in light and air, became sacred. It was as if my soul understood before my mind could catch up. Be here. Treasure this. I printed that photo on canvas and gave it to my mom. It hung on her wall, a silent witness to the holy importance of time well spent and of presence shared. God was speaking through image and word, saying, "This time is precious. Be in it." Long before my mother's diagnosis, I began practicing being in the now. Because of that, I was able to truly be with her in those final months. I wasn't projecting into fear or future. I was holding her hand, noticing her smile, treasuring our time. One moment in particular I remember with such clarity. We were on our way to Fox Chase Cancer Center, making the long drive from South Jersey to Philadelphia to learn more about the stage of her cancer. The car was filled with quiet, a kind of silence that carried more than words ever could. I don't remember our conversation. I only remember the moment that she reached over, without a glance or a word, and gently held my hand. I drove one-handed, our fingers wrapped around each other in stillness. It was a warm embrace I didn't know I needed in that moment. I should have been the one comforting her, but in that gesture, she comforted me. We held hands nearly the entire way, right up until we reached the place where our hearts would break and no more good answers would be had. That moment, just like the photo, feels like a snapshot of divine presence, of grace. After her passing, my hunger for understanding deepened. I read book after book about signs from loved ones, about the afterlife, about near-death experiences and thin places between here and heaven. One book that cracked my heart open in the most healing way was Tuesdays with Maury by Mitch Albom. In it, Maury, a dying professor, shares life lessons with his former student. It reminded me that death, though heartbreaking, can be a profound teacher. Reading showed me how the deepest connections in life, those formed through vulnerability, love, and wisdom, are eternal. That my mother's essence, her spirit, her light, had not vanished. For me, reading was never just an escape. It was a sanctuary. It's where I met myself again and again, in fiction, in memoir, in philosophy. Sometimes I'd lose myself in a fairy tale or fantasy, and I'd emerge with something soft in me, something soothed. Other times I'd finish a chapter of a book and feel like I'd just been handed the key to my own heart. A particular life-changing book, Elsewhere by Gabrielle Zevin, is an all-time favorite book of mine. It will forever live in my heart. I stumbled upon it one quiet morning in my high school library, a place where I often sat before class or during lunch. The story follows a girl named Lizzie, who dies and ends up in a place called Elsewhere, where people age backwards until they are reborn. Lizzie's job in the afterlife is to work with animals who speak in their own voices, revealing personalities, thoughts, and dreams. I especially adored the way the dogs talked in the book, each with their own voice and personality. That detail still brings me to tears and laughter, because it reminds me of my mom. She always gave voices to our pets, each with their own distinct accent and character. It was a gift she had, and it kept our family laughing. Sometimes we'd even have full conversations with our pets through her playful improvisation. It was silly, but so sincere and unique to her. Only now, as I write this, do I realize even that love for elsewhere was part of the sacred story. Another ripple God had planted early on. Lucy the dog, Liz left behind in the story, still lives in my heart too, just as the dogs we've loved and lost do. And in so many ways, it brings me comfort and connection back to my mom. Her humor, her tenderness, her presence. Isn't it peculiar and beautiful that God was building the foundation of healing before the trauma came? I didn't know why I was devouring books on presence, on letting go, on life after death, but now I do. He was preparing me, strengthening me, whispering, "You'll need this, daughter, and I am with you." Reading became one of my ripples, a quiet rhythm that carried me through. In a world that can be loud and painful, books offered stillness and clarity. They were breadcrumbs on the path back to myself and back to God. So I read, and I healed, even before I knew what healing was. I'm still reading, still healing, still marveling at how the author of life was inspiration into my story all along. Reflection prompt. What wisdom came to you through pages, whether fiction, memoir, scripture, or even childhood story, and how did it help nourish your mind, body, or soul? Blessing. May you always be guided to the words your soul is ready to receive. May the pages you turn nourish not only your thoughts, but your spirit, reminding you of truth, tenderness, and the sacredness of your story. May the author of life meet you in every line, in every still morning, with book in hand, in every late night passage that softens your heart. May you be surprised by wisdom that finds you before you even know you need it, and may your heart remain open to healing through stories, poems, prayers, and divine whispers. You are being nourished in ways you may not yet see. Let every book you hold become a lamp for your feet, and may you always find your way home, to peace, to purpose, and to the one who knows your every chapter. Books showed me how to breathe again. Journaling taught me how to speak my own truths. Ripple 7. Anchored in ink. My voice didn't rush in. It waited for the ache to settle, for the fog to lift, for the quiet to come. And when it did, I wrote, not to be heard, but to listen. Each word became a step back to the truth that I'd buried, and forward into the person God was gently restoring me to be. For the longest time, I had trouble writing in journals. I had a collection of beautiful notebooks, each one waiting for my thoughts, but every time I opened one, the blank pages felt daunting. I was paralyzed by the thought that my words weren't worthy enough for paper. My thoughts weren't neat enough, profound enough, or important enough to be recorded in these journals that seemed so sacred. My journals sat unused, each one gathering dust as I continued to push the idea of journaling away, thinking it wasn't for me. Many of the journals I own have been gifted to me by my aunt, a woman who's been a mighty thread in the fabric of my healing. She always told me my story was one of beauty and triumph, even when I could only see brokenness and survival. Her belief in me was steady, almost prophetic, and she had a way of helping me see God's handiwork, even in the darkest moments. She taught me to slow down, to love myself gently, and to listen closely to the voice of grace. With what I call her spidey senses, she often knew, before I did, that I was pushing too hard, burning the candle at both ends, and asking too much of my body and soul. She saw the toll and the stress was taking on me, and lovingly tried to guide me away from the path she herself had once walked. She reminded me time and again to lean on God and to notice the small, quiet signs that He was always near and in all the details. For a long time, the journal she gave me remained untouched. Beautiful outside, but intimidating on the inside. I struggled to put my thoughts to paper, convinced that my words weren't worthy, that my mess didn't belong in something so sacred. I feared I didn't have anything important to say. Writing didn't come in a rush. It came in the quiet, in the slow return to myself. It arrived later in my healing, when the storm had softened and I had finally paused long enough to listen. The shift began when a friend from my step group gave me a journal filled with thoughtful prompts. That small act opened the floodgates. The questions invited me deeper, past surface thoughts, and into places I had been afraid or unable to go. With each prompt, I felt a thread reconnecting me to myself. I'm deeply grateful for yet again another person from my community, my people, showing up in exactly the way I needed, offering a gentle tool that turned out to be a lifeline. I began writing again, not to be profound, but to be honest, not to be seen, but to see. My journal became a refuge, a meeting place between me and God, where I could bring the unsaid, the unfinished, and the unfolding. And slowly I started to find something I never expected: my voice. But then, as healing began to unfold, I learned the core truth behind my hesitation. I had believed that only perfect thoughts deserved to be written down, that only my most polished self could be captured on paper. What I didn't realize was that healing doesn't happen in perfection. It happens in the mess, the raw, the unfinished pieces of us. The very things I had been afraid to put on paper were the things that needed to be written most. Journaling became a quiet companion, something I turned to when the noise in my mind became too loud to carry alone. I didn't always know what I was writing or why. Sometimes it was prayers, sometimes questions, sometimes raw pain poured out without punctuation. Over time, the pages became a mirror, a place to see myself clearly, a place to begin again. There's something sacred about writing with no expectation, no audience, no filter. When I put pen to paper, I'm honest in a way I rarely am out loud. My journal doesn't ask me to be strong or explain, it just listens. And in that silence, healing speaks. Journaling helped me find my voice in seasons when I felt silenced by grief, confusion, and overwhelm. When I felt like I had lost pieces of myself to motherhood, to caregiving, to survival, it brought me home. It reminded me that I still had dreams, thoughts, and a spirit that mattered. My story didn't end with trauma. It unfolded through it, and I began to see the gift I had long dismissed, the gift of writing itself. My mom always told me I had a natural way with words, that my writing flowed and carried meaning, that it made people feel and understand. She often encouraged me to write, but I couldn't see the value myself. I wish I had believed her sooner. Journaling was how I finally came to believe her. Answering thought-provoking prompts, reflecting on scripture, and asking God what I was meant to learn or share gave my writing depth. It grounded me. Slowly, I started to trust the words I carried were not just mine, but divinely guided. That my voice had purpose. I began to write not just to process, but to remember who I am and what I've come through. Every line written in truth is a thread pulling me back to wholeness. Writing didn't just help me process my pain. It helped me reclaim the truth I had been quietly gathering from so many places. Words I had read in books, insights shared by friends, small acts of kindness from my community, all shaping me. But it wasn't until I began putting pen to paper that I truly understood how much had been planted. Journaling gave me space to sort it all out, to witness my own evolution. Self-doubt that once shadowed my thoughts began to loosen its grip. I started to rewrite old narratives and see my strength not just in hindsight, but in real time. My confidence didn't erupt. It bloomed, slowly, steadily. With each sentence, I was no longer just surviving. I was remembering. I was restoring. I was writing myself home. Pages became altars, sacred places where I met God in the most ordinary ways and in the most broken parts of me. You keep track of all my sorrows. You have collected all of my tears in your bottle. You have recorded each one in your book. Psalm 56:8. In 2017, I sat down with someone dear to me. We created vision boards. We weren't sure what would come of it, just that it felt good to pause, to dream, and piece together hopes into images. My board was built in the back of an old calendar, filled with snapshots of peace and purpose. I had no idea that every image I glued down that day would eventually bloom into reality. This is the quiet power of intentionality, of setting our hearts in alignment with something greater than ourselves. Some call it visioning, others call it manifestation. I call it communion with God. Whether through prayer, dreams, or quiet reflection, I believe we are constantly co-creating with the divine. When we take time to pause, to see, feel, and speak what's within us, we begin to open our lives to possibilities. Visions don't always come to life in the exact way we plan, but it always carries the fingerprints of something sacred. Mini Ripple Challenge. Set aside some time this week. Collect a few old magazines, printed images, or personal photos that reflect the life you're leaning toward. It doesn't have to be big or perfect, just honest. Create a board or page that holds your dreams. Then offer it up, breathe over it, pray over it, surrender it. Whisper, if this is for me, I'm ready to receive. If not, guide me to what is. In many ways, my journals became bottles that caught my tears, pages where sorrow, joy, confusion, and hope could land. But before I wrote a word, God had seen it all. Psalm 56:8 reminds me that He keeps record not to shame us, but to show us how deeply we are known and remembered. Just as I wrote to find myself, God has been writing my story all along, with care, with mercy, and with love. Creating a vision board, prayer board, or intention journal can be a tangible way to listen inward and speak outward. It's not about controlling the outcome. It's about tuning your heart to receive. Manifestation is magical. It's a partnership. It's listening. It's trusting that what stirs within you may very well be God's whisper calling you forward. Reflection prompt. What has my silence been trying to say? If I trusted that my story matters, what would I write about today? What would I tell the version of me who was afraid to write? Mantra. My words are sacred. My voice is healing. My story matters. Blessing. May you come to trust the words that rise within you. May journaling become a sacred place of truth, restoration, and divine conversation. May your heart feel safe to speak freely, and in every page you write, read, or create, you hear the loving whisper of God saying, I have always been here, and I have never stopped listening. Ripple 8. Rhythm in the ripples. It didn't happen all at once. Each ripple moved through me like a note in a song, subtle yet sacred and true. One breath led to another. Practice became prayer. Somewhere along the way, rhythm returned. Not perfect, not finished, but whole. The pieces began to hum in harmony. Looking back now, I can see how each ripple, each healing practice, each turning point didn't just stand alone. They moved in harmony, weaving a quiet rhythm that carried me forward, even when I didn't realize I was moving at all. At first, I sought healing in fragments, a quiet breath here, a worship song there, a yoga pose, a grounding walk, a journal entry scratched out in the dark. Each one met me in a different moment of need, a different pocket of pain. They seemed scattered, small acts of surviving, trying to hold back a rising tide. But I see it differently now. Each of those practices, a note in a larger melody I couldn't yet hear, a piece of a puzzle that didn't make sense until I stepped back and let time do its work. Eventually, the pieces began to fit with a kind of grace that surprised me. Seamlessly, purposefully, like something sacred had always been orchestrating the rhythm beneath the surface. Music helped me access emotion when I had no words. Breath helped me regulate when my mind spiraled. Yoga and Pilates helped me return to my body after I had abandoned it in survival. Stillness helped me hear God's voice when the noise got too loud. Writing helped me witness my journey instead of rushing past it. Community helped me remember I didn't have to heal alone. It held space when I couldn't hold it for myself, reminding me that I am seen, supported, and carried. Surrender helped me release the illusion that I had to hold it all together. It invited me to place the weight of my healing into God's hands. It became a sacred trust, not my will, but His. Even when I didn't understand the why, I began to believe in His who. I let go, not into nothingness, but into the arms of a God who sees the whole picture and loves me through every piece. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean on not your own understanding. Proverbs 3:5. Slowly, the ripples converged. They weren't separate escapes from pain. They were sacred currents guiding me home, like water running over stone, soft but persistent. Each practice shaped me, smoothed my sharp edges, carved out space for peace, and revealed the strength I didn't know I still had. Today I find myself in a place once doubted I'd ever reach. The anxiety that once screamed for avoidance has quieted. The fatigue that used to pull me under like a riptide has eased. The self-doubt that crept into every decision has loosened its grip, and in its place, a deep-grounded confidence, a clarity that feels earned, not forced, a joy that isn't giddy or fleeting, but is steady and sacred. My nervous system, once frazzled and flooded, now feels resilient. My mind, once overrun with thoughts, now honors space. My spirit, once searching in the dark, now knows where to find the light. The most miraculous part? It didn't happen all at once. It happened breath by breath, ripple by ripple. I didn't have to climb out of the depths in one great leap. I just had to keep floating, keep choosing, keep receiving. The healing wasn't linear. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. Now, when the difficult days come, and they do, I meet them differently. I know where my anchors are. I return to breath. I play music. I step onto the mat. I ask what I need instead of pushing it away. I no longer abandon myself in the name of getting by. I've learned that wholeness doesn't mean being untouched by pain. It means becoming someone who can hold pain without being swallowed by it. And perhaps no memory taught me that more than this one. There's one memory I haven't spoken about, maybe because even now it trembles beneath the surface, because writing it down means I have to fully feel it. It was 4th of July, 2021, a day that used to mean celebration, barbecues, sparklers, family. My mom's joy for fireworks was unmatched. She lit up with every burst in the sky. But that year was different. That year, we were in the thick of survival. Our twins were 8 months old. Every day blurred into the next. We hadn't made plans. I was tired, beyond tired, and so was she. I knew she wasn't feeling great in those days leading up to the holiday, but she had one of her good days just recently. I remember thinking, maybe we're turning a corner. Maybe this is another wave she'll ride through. And then the first call came. Relief. She had finally agreed to go with the paramedics. We had been begging her. My Nana had pleaded with her. And when she finally said yes, I thought, thank God. We were already packing the kids up and prepping for the ride to be with her. I didn't think it was goodbye. I thought they would help her, stabilize her, and bring her back to how she had been just a few days before. But that wasn't the case. The next call was the one I had been silently bracing for at so many points since her diagnosis. No amount of bracing can soften a blow like that. She was gone. Her body was weary and worn from her battle with cancer. It had finally surrendered. I still can't remember much of that day after that. Only flashes. The sky exploding with color, while my world dimmed in shades of gray. Fireworks lit up the night in bursts of celebration, but all I could see were blurred streaks through tear-soaked eyes. Grief sat heavy in the car like fog, thick and unspoken, and the road ahead felt endless. My son's small voice reached for comfort I didn't have, and I clung to words I could barely whisper. She's sending them to us. Look at the sky. I was unraveling in the passenger seat of my own life, watching my husband's silent tears fall as he gripped the steering wheel, driving us through the longest night we'd ever known. The celebration of freedom, once filled with sparklers and laughter, had turned into the moments my heart was bound in loss. A night I will never forget. The night she left. A night when heaven opened just wide enough to let her slip through. I kept whispering to my son the only comfort I could think of to offer. Words that were really meant for all of us. Look at the fireworks. Grandma is sending them to us. I said it again and again, a mantra in the ache, because what else could I give him in that moment except something beautiful to believe in? Something beautiful to believe in for myself. I believe she chose that day, her day, the day of light, In all her saved videos and photos, her love for fireworks radiated joy. I think she knew. She wanted us to look up, not just in grief, but in awe. She wanted us to remember her when the sky cracks open and the light breaks through. Up until last year, the 3rd anniversary of her passing, could I watch the fireworks. Until then, I couldn't bear the sound, the sting, the memory. But now, I'm trying. I'm learning how to hold the ache and the beauty at the same time. Now, every 4th of July, when the sky erupts in color, I look up. Hi, Mom. I see you. I feel you. I know you're still sending them. Losing her shattered me completely. I was undone in every way, broken, disoriented, and lost in a fog I didn't know how to come back from. Grief didn't just knock the wind out of me, it dismantled the very framework of who I thought I was. For a long time, I couldn't find my way back to any semblance of myself. I moved through the days like a shadow, aching for her presence, for meaning, for a path through the pain. A small choice each day, one drop, and then another, became ripples. Quiet at first, and steady, little by little, gently carry me back to life, back to myself. I still miss her every day. I still long to hear her voice, to feel her arms around me, to share with her all that has unfolded. But the ache is different now. It lives alongside joy. It breathes besides gratitude. Her loss is still part of me, but not in the same all-consuming way. It's quieter now, woven into who I am, not erasing me, but shaping me. I am no longer surviving. I'm rooted, I'm restored, renewed. I look in the mirror and I recognize her again, the woman I was always becoming, the mother, the artist, the seeker, the believer. She's still growing, still learning, still healing. But she is here, and she is home. Like the final piece of a long-labored puzzle slipping into place. I now see how it all fits, the timing, the tears, the tools, the triumph. When the ripples became rhythm, the rhythm became restoration. Reflection prompt. What parts of your healing journey have felt like ripples, small at first, but powerful in their effect? How have your own practices started to converge and carry you to a greater peace and presence? Mantra. All of me is welcome here. Every ripple of healing has brought me home. Blessing. May you come to trust the rhythm within you. May the ripples of your healing converge in perfect time, weaving a story more beautiful than you imagined. And may you always remember, wholeness was never found in the rush, but in the grace of rhythm and the sacred timing of your return. With rhythm discovered and roots restored, we step together into the next chapter, where every ending sparks a new beginning. Ripple 9. Formerly Unwritten. There's a moment in every storm when the sky splits wide open, and you're no longer sure if you're falling or floating. It's the flash between the thunder and silence, when your feet forget the ground and the world tilts just enough to disorient you. There were quite a few in this story, but this ripple truly holds that moment for me. I didn't know I was slipping at first. It started subtly, a new lens which I saw the world, sharper, more connected, almost euphoric. I felt a deep pull to help others, especially those who felt like outcasts, black sheep, or forgotten. It was as if I could feel their pain without needing words. I began to speak to people I didn't know, sharing love I didn't fully understand. I was unraveling, my grief spilling out in ways I couldn't control. The exhaustion crept in silently. I wasn't sleeping. I couldn't eat. My mind was racing with unexplainable messages and thoughts. Everyone around me saw it. I kept telling them I'd sleep, I'd drink, I'd try, but nothing worked. My body was running on fumes, a soul stretched too wide, too fast. The human body is only capable of holding so much. It stores what it cannot speak, grief, trauma, longing, all tucked into muscles, breath, and bone. Eventually, even the strongest vessel begins to crack under the weight. My mind felt untethered from the world I once knew. I began what I now call documenting, recording myself to remember, to process, to hold on to something real. I still have those recordings of the drive I took alone, talking to my mom. It was almost as if she were in the car beside me. It felt like a true conversation with her spirit. I no longer desperately seek her in those ways. But I now understand that moment was a tether, a line connecting my grief to healing, to my ache, to hope. And in those moments, it was her. It was us. It was what I needed. Still, I was slipping further. The night before her memorial, what we called her celebration of life, I approached a stranger and hugged them. I felt like I could sense their story, their pain, or maybe I was hoping they could feel mine. In that quiet embrace, I think I was trying to share the weight of grief, to ease the ache, if only for a moment. My husband and family rushed to me when they found me, gently pulled me away. The stranger, sensing my disorientation, called for help, for me. That moment of love, confusion, and collapse set everything into motion. I remember thinking the EMTs weren't real. COVID protocols meant I had to ride alone. I didn't know where they were taking me, nor did I care. It wasn't even a thought in my mind. I was floating. What follows now is not mine to tell alone. As I slipped into that storm, my husband stood on the shore, watching the woman he loved disappear into something he couldn't name, couldn't stop, couldn't follow. I asked him to share what those hours, those days felt like. Eventually he did. Now I carry his side of the story too. I offer this next part in my husband's words, his voice. It belongs to the one who held on through it all.
That night when you got the call, I could feel the bottom drop out from under you, and from me. You and Jaden were devastated. I drove us through the highway of fireworks, tears silently falling as I tried to be the rock you both needed. But in the days after, I saw you disappearing. You were not sleeping, not eating, and began speaking in a way I didn't recognize. You'd drift in and out of lucidity, talking with intense purpose, but it didn't make much sense to anyone but you. I watched helpless as you deteriorated. When you hugged that stranger, I knew we were at a tipping point. I watched them take you away in the back of that ambulance. I had no idea where they were taking you. I wasn't allowed to ride along. No one told me anything. You were just gone. I started calling hospitals, one after another, trying not to panic, but already deep in it. Hours passed. I didn't know if I'd lost you. I knew your bond with your mom ran deep. I also knew this grief was swallowing you whole. When I finally found the hospital you were in and that you were sleeping, is when I finally exhaled. You were still here. That's all I needed. I packed up the twins. They hadn't been sleeping well at your family's house. They needed their crib, and I needed our bed. I needed our home, the one we built together. It was the only place that made sense. Even without you in it, it felt like the only place I could catch my breath and pray you'd find your way back to it. To us. The ride home with the kids, just me, 11-year-old Jaden, and 8-month-old twins, was one of the loneliest drives I've ever taken. No fireworks that night, just a silent conversation with God, asking why, what's my role in this, what do I do next? And yet, when you were released from the hospital the very next day, I saw you again, the woman I knew. We held each other in front of the building, broken but together. And somehow, through it all, God held us both. God knew you needed rest, and that the hospital was the only way you'd get it. Your mom's memorial was delayed, but came together beautifully. It was exactly what it needed to be for her and the family. Exactly what your mom would have wanted.
Reading those words, I see now that we were both holding tethers in the dark. His hand reaching for stability, mine reaching for something beyond what I could see. In the hospital, I remember flashes, divine movie reels playing in my mind. Somewhere in that blur came the most unexpected message, clearer than anything else. I don't know if it was a dream, a vision, or something only my soul could hear, but it felt like a conversation with God Himself. And in it, I wasn't the one speaking. I was simply listening. I didn't hear answers. I heard weariness. Not my own, but His. A divine ache that echoed through me. They keep asking me why. It wasn't angry. It wasn't condemning. It was heavy, tender, tired. Like a father who'd carried his children through every storm, yet was rarely recognized in the rescue. And suddenly, I understood, not in a way I could explain, but in a way I could feel. God wasn't the pain maker. He was the presence. He wasn't the cause of the fire. He was the water. He wasn't the break. He was the balm. He wasn't the reason for my mother's suffering. He was the one holding us through it. In that stillness, something even more mysterious occurred. It wasn't just that I leaned on God. It was that for one fleeting, sacred moment, I felt Him lean on me. Not because I was strong or weak, but because I was surrendered. Because I was available. Because I was listening. It was a moment I didn't fully understand until now, years later. Writing these words and putting together all of these moments. At the time, I couldn't make sense of it. What had happened to me? Why had it unfolded the way it did? I searched gently for understanding, asking doctors, therapists, friends, and people of faith I trusted. I hoped someone might reflect back, some shared sense of what I had experienced. Writing these words in combination with experiencing real-time lessons, it finally took shape within me. With unmistakable clarity, that moment wasn't just for me. It was a call to carry something forward, a message, a reminder, a sacred whisper meant for others too. So many of us in our deepest grief beg the heavens for a reason, for answers. Why her? Why now? Why this pain? I still don't have the answers. I never will. But I've come to trust something far more sacred than explanations. God doesn't owe us answers. He offers us presence. And that presence is the only thing strong enough to carry us through the storm. and the asking, if we seek it. This chapter isn't about madness. It's about mercy. It's about how sometimes we break in order to be rebuilt. Our aching questions don't always get answers, but they do get held. And sometimes that's more healing than the explanation. Even now, in this very moment, after all the pages, the pauses, the prayers, I'm still uncovering reflections and ripples I didn't know I needed. In conversations with those I've trusted enough to be vulnerable. During the writing of this book, I find myself saying things I didn't realize I believed until the words left my mouth, until they were written in these very pages. Now I wonder, if I hadn't written this, would I have found this deep healing? These answers, not the ones I once demanded, but the quiet ones my soul had been waiting for, only arrived because I made space for them. I poured my heart out onto the page, and the truth met me there. Somewhere in the letting go, the return began. And in that, I see it clearly now. This is a full circle moment, a sacred ripple coming home. Not an ending, but a return to center, where grief, grace, and God all live together, making peace. This book didn't just reflect my healing, it created it, ripple by ripple. It's meant to be carried by the ones who feel forgotten by God, or unsure He was ever there. It's for the ones who believe they should have more faith, but instead are just trying to make it through the day. It's for the ill mother who's terrified of leaving her child behind. It's for the friend who's questioning everything, including his worth and own existence. It's for the big sister holding on for her siblings and family, the one who's the glue. It's for the hearts that don't know how to pray, but still ache for peace. This book is also for all those who are asking, or will one day find themselves asking, the gut-wrenching, soul-splitting whys, the kind that echo in hospital rooms, in sleepless nights, in the quiet after devastating news. Why now? Why them? Why pain? Why me? Why not me? These aren't soft questions. They rise from hollowed places, from the ache of love and the agony of loss. While this book may not answer them in the way the world expects, it does offer something quieter, perhaps even more lasting. Presence. A flicker of light in the thickest fog. A hand on your back when you think you're alone. A ripple, subtle but certain, pulling you gently towards peace. A knowing that your soul still thumps with divine presence, even if you don't recognize it, or you don't have a name for it. Maybe this book doesn't offer all the answers, but I pray it offers a pause, a breath, a glimpse of the collateral beauty that lives inside even our deepest sorrow. While I would never wish this kind of pain on anyone, I do see the beauty that is bloomed from it. Advice I had offered to others in times before my own devastating loss. Words that felt wise then, but now carry a different weight. I remember speaking those very words in 2016. My sister lost her beloved dog, her soulmate, Sky, in a tragic and unexpected moment. I sat beside her, holding her as she grieved the loss of her best friend, unsure what words could possibly comfort her. Her heart was cracked wide open. I wanted so badly to fix it, but all I could offer were soft promises I didn't yet fully understand. Whispering promises about how beauty would return, how love would never really leave us. And even though I couldn't name it then, I felt with deep certainty in my spirit, my soul, that she would be met with something sacred. It was around that time I stumbled upon the film Collateral Beauty, a movie that left a permanent imprint on me. It explored how love, time, and even death are not meant to be feared, but witnessed. How in the aftermath of loss, beauty can still bloom. This movie met us in a time of deep sorrow for the loss of such a sweet little soul. I've spoken of it often, yet strangely most people I mention it to don't seem to recall it, as if it was only for those walking through the quiet ache of loss, waiting for a ripple of meaning to rise. Months later, my sister received the news and blessing of new life. She gave birth to a beautiful baby girl. Her name? Skyland. A name once spoken in grief that's now spoken in joy. A love that didn't disappear, it only transformed. It was the kind of beauty that doesn't announce itself, but stays, that carries you, ripple by ripple. Love returned. Not in the way that we expected, but in the way we needed. And maybe that's the heart of it all. To witness what breaks and let it carry you, softly, quietly, and towards what heals. It felt like a promise fulfilled, a ripple of beauty rising from the ache. The kind of moment Collateral Beauty was made to reflect. Quiet, profound, missable by the world, but unforgettable to the heart. I never thought I could truly extend that same grace to myself. I was a woman untethered, searching for my mother in every shadow and whisper. Grief had hollowed me in places I didn't know could be touched. And yet in that hollow space something tender began to grow. There's a kind of wisdom born only through loss, a clarity that doesn't come with answers, but with deeper presence. I began to see the beauty not just around the loss, but somehow through it. The strength I once used to hold everything together became the softness that allowed it all to fall apart and be made new. The unraveling marked the beginning, the inspiration behind ripples of healing and hope. This beauty isn't loud. It doesn't shout over grief. It arrives like a breath after we've forgotten how to breathe. And once we've seen it, really seen it, we carry it forever. It breaks my heart that there are so many still swimming in sorrow, unable to lift their eyes towards that light. I want you to know, it's there. Even if only for a flicker, a heartbeat, a single clear moment, it's there. You don't need to chase it. You only need to let the fog lift from the lens, even just for a moment. If you can do that, even once, it will change you. Because once you witness beauty through the cracks, it never stops showing up. Reflection prompt. Pause here. Let your heart return to a moment that felt unbearable. Now breathe into it. Was there a sliver of light? A hand you didn't expect? A ripple you didn't recognize at the time? What if beauty isn't what comes after the pain, but what chooses to walk with us through it? What if healing isn't the absence of ache, but the presence of grace beside it? Sometimes we have to look again, not with the eyes that broke, but with the ones that stayed open anyway. What you find there may not erase the sorrow, but it may just reveal the beauty that never stopped trying to reach you. Ripple 10. A hug that doesn't end. What they don't tell you about grief, what I wish I had known, this chapter is for the ones watching it, the ones living it, the ones unsure what to say. Grief doesn't always look like tears. Sometimes it looks like silence, like forgetting to eat or forgotten words to a song you've sung a million times. It may look like eyes that drift off mid-conversation, like bursts of laughter that feel oddly timed. Sometimes it looks like someone you love becoming someone you don't quite recognize, or in my case, someone you know and love in someone you don't know at all. When my storm came, it unfolded in waves. As I unraveled, I could feel the discomfort in those around me, the unsure glances, soft, well-meaning words, some that didn't land, the silence when no one knew what to say. This chapter isn't a manual. It's a heart note. It's what I wish others could understand and what I wish I'd known. It's what I now try to hold space for in others, because grief, especially when it's raw, is holy ground. And too often we tiptoe around it, afraid to say the wrong thing, when what most of us truly need is someone who's willing to stay anyway, to hold us, to hear us, not for the sake of understanding the words, but to feel the weight of them, of what we carry, and let it matter, simply by showing up, again and again, even when it's hard. First and foremost, it doesn't have a timeline. It changes your nervous system completely. It can feel like brain fog, physical pain, rage, fear, guilt, or numbness, soul-deep fatigue, all in one day. It's often expected to be quieter over time, but sometimes it gets louder. The body keeps grief's score. It lives in your breath, sleep, digestion, and memory. Joy can coexist with grief. It doesn't cancel it out. And sometimes the deepest grief isn't loud at all. It's invisible. Grief can isolate the grieving not because they want distance, but because they don't know how to be in a world that keeps moving. I didn't know that the ache would come in waves, unannounced, inconvenient, often when the world around me seemed fine. I didn't know that my body would feel like it was shutting down from the inside out. That sounds, smells, or passing strangers would feel like gut punches. I didn't know how unseen grief could really be, and that even though I was feeling it, I could not name it, but I do now. And if you're reading this, maybe you're grieving too. Or maybe you're loving someone through it. Either way, I want you to know, it's okay not to have the answers. Love shown gently and consistently is enough. Presence is ministry. A quiet, I'm still here, matters more than you could ever know. Grief doesn't follow a calendar, but your body might. What I didn't realize at first, what I wish someone had told me, is that even months before an anniversary of loss, your body can begin to spiral again. Sleepless nights, racing thoughts, old aches all rising like ghosts. In the beginning, I didn't see the pattern, but now I see it coming like clockwork. As the month approaches, so does unexplainable physical and mental decline. At first I just thought, I'm still a broken mess, but now I understand. My body remembers. It braces, even before my mind catches up. The first year, the second year, the third year, every fourth arrived not with fireworks, but with a heaviness I couldn't explain. While others celebrated, I could barely breathe. It felt like I was grieving alone, in a world that didn't pause. I didn't know how to function, let alone be around joy when mine had been so deeply fractured. But this year, year 4, is finally different for me. Because this year, I feel ready to choose joy. I choose to meet the pain with purpose. I choose to birth this book as a way to carry her memory forward, even though dredging up the pain and the past is painful, scary, and intimidating to share. I choose to let my grief be seen anyway, to be shaped into something that could help others find their way through, but also so this day can finally hold both sorrow and celebration. I still miss her, just as much, if not even more. But I'm learning to let joy grow taller than the ache. I'm learning to turn her anniversary into a tribute. to reflect on the love she gave, the laughter we shared, and the ways she lives on through my children, my voice, my healing. Every year I will return to these pages, especially on July 4th, and I pray now that in every year to come, what I've learned and what I've written will help others walking the same aching path, to help those trying to find a way to hold joy and grief in the same trembling hands. The pain may never fully leave, but it's so important to remember the goal is not to make it go away, but to let joy expand around it like a warm embrace. To believe that our loved ones, who are still so near, help us find that joy day after day and year after year. If we open, they do find us. It may take time because in the early days the pain is too much. The lens is too foggy. But eventually, when we are ready, they will, and when they do, you'll see the signs again and again, in the smallest, strangest, most sacred ways. A heart-shaped cloud in the sky or terrain, a butterfly that won't leave your side, a penny or feather in a peculiar place, or on the ground just when you've asked for a sign. A scent in the candle aisle that smells exactly like them, too perfect to be a coincidence. A vivid dream that lingers like a visit. A lyric that speaks directly to your ache. A moment in the grocery store where someone uses a silly word your loved one always said, and you and your person just know she's here. She's laughing with you. You can't make this stuff up. All of these things have actually happened to me, some recently. My husband and I were shopping. We could hear two employees banter from the next aisle over. Out of nowhere, we heard one of them call the other a dingleberry. We looked at each other, wide-eyed, and then burst into knowing grins and loud laughter. Mom. That was her word. That was her magic. These moments may seem small to the outside world, but to me, they are a big, warm hug. For a while, I was searching for that, for any thread, any glimpse. I remember one of the last photos I took of us hugging. I clung to that image, trying to hold on. I understand why I found comfort in the quote, "A mother's hug lasts long after she lets go." It's because she hasn't really let go. She's still hugging me, just in a different way now. Here are some other truths I felt necessary to include. Gentle human insights, if you love someone who's grieving, not as a professional, but coming from someone who's been there. Be present, not perfect. You don't need the right words, you just need to show up and stay. Don't rush them through it. There's no fixing grief. It isn't a problem to solve. It's a wound to witness. Let them feel how they feel. Some days they may need company. Some days they may not answer. Both are okay. And their absence is not a reflection of their love or lack of love for you. Offer tangible help. Grief fog makes decision-making extremely hard and planning near impossible. Bring a meal. Run the errand. Text, "I'm at the store, what can I grab you?" Better yet, if you know them well enough, just grab what you know they love or need without the announcement. Keep checking in, even months later. The world may have moved on, but they haven't. Speak their loved one's name. Most grieving people don't want them forgotten. If that's the case, help them remember the details. Don't make it about your discomfort. Sit in their silence. Let them be where they are without judgment or needing them to be who they used to be. We are never the same again. It's not a great thing, but it's also not horrible. It's just different. We changed. Honor the becoming, the strength and the resilience, the growth. Grief does something to the brain that's hard to explain unless you've lived it. It's not just about sadness, it's about feeling like you're underwater in your own mind. My memory doesn't work the way it used to. I live by my Google Calendar now. If we haven't penciled you in, I'm most likely going to miss our date. Not because I don't want to be there, but probably because I can't keep it all straight anymore. My words don't always line up in neat little rows with perfect punctuation or flow. You may even see it here in these pages. But I tried my best, and that's what truly matters. Sometimes I reach for a sentence, and it vanishes before it lands. Yet through writing this, through this act of naming what I've lived through, I'm finding something beautiful. With a little help, time, and self-love, my messy, tangled, tear-streaked thoughts are still forming a path. A way through, a hand held out for someone else, and that is sacred to me. Even on the days when my mind feels frayed, my heart still knows exactly what it wants to say. I believe that's the part grief can't take from us. The heart's quiet knowing. Just yesterday, I felt that knowing pull me in the middle of a grocery store aisle. I was passing an elderly woman when something in me stopped. It was like an invisible string pulling me toward her. She reached for a heavy case of drinks and quietly, sweetly to herself, said, "These are the days I wish my husband was still here." Without thinking twice, no hesitation, I gently stepped in. "Oh, 1 second, ma'am," I said. "Let me get that for you." She smiled and made a sweet joke about bringing me home with her, and I told her sincerely how much it warmed my heart to help her, especially since I'd been missing the seniors I used to care for. Later, at home, cozied up and reflecting on the day with my husband, who saw and heard this unfold, he laughed and said, "I can't take you anywhere. You get picked up by seniors everywhere we go." I joked that maybe I needed a sign too. Attention, loving seniors, free to good home. But then I grew quiet. I told him what I truly felt, what I really believe. That her husband was there, in that moment. Maybe God or maybe both. Either way, she was struggling in that moment. Maybe with lingering grief of her lost husband, or summoning the strength it would take to lift that case. We don't know what may be transpiring in someone's life, what storm they may be in. But even though he couldn't lift that case physically for her, he could send someone who would. Someone who would see her, really see her, and her pain. I don't know what was going through her mind, but my hope is that small fleeting moment, she felt his love. I wish I had the courage to say what I had felt out loud, but that's grief too. It makes you question the most sacred truths, because you fear they might sound crazy. Still, I believe in what happened. Still believe their love never truly leaves you. It may just be that they have to deliver it in another package. If we're open, even through our brokenness, we can become vessels for that love to keep moving forward. Blessing. I leave every tear, every word, every moment shared here in these pages to ripple out with purpose, a quiet offering born from the rawest ache to become something sacred and lasting, something that might hold another when they need it most, just like a hug, one that doesn't end. Epilogue. The ripple continues. If you've made it this far, thank you. Thank you for sitting with my story, for allowing the unfiltered beauty of healing wash over you. My hope in writing this wasn't to showcase a perfect journey. It's far from that, but to invite you into a raw one. a journey where grief and growth intertwine, where faith flickers and flames, where healing doesn't always look like resolution, but like deep roots that hold steady when the wind picks up again. I see now the ripples in my life didn't begin with pain, they began with love, with a God who gently placed seeds of strength and wisdom in my path long before I'd know I'd need them. With a mother who modeled quiet acceptance and fierce love, with moments that seemed small at the time, but were laying the foundation for my becoming. My mom didn't raise me with rigid religious beliefs. In fact, I only recall attending church or discussing God a handful of times throughout my childhood, but I never felt a void, because what she gave me instead was something just as sacred: the freedom to observe, to think, and to feel deeply for myself. She taught me to see people for who they were at their core, and to love them for all their stuff, and to trust my own light. Only in adulthood did I feel and understand the quiet pull towards faith, the one that felt like home. It started with one outdoor church service, where the wind and the word seemed to meet me right where I was, an experience that opened a door in my spirit I hadn't realized was waiting to be unlocked. Even this was a ripple from her, the mother who didn't force me to believe, but planted in me the courage to seek. I understand now she was always hoping I would see it too, and eventually I did. I see it in the garden where death becomes life again. I see it in my children's laughter, in a song that brings peace, in the warmth of a book in my hands. I see it in the way healing began before the pain arrived, and I see it most of all in the way love refuses to die. Healing is not a checklist. It's not a destination you arrive at with a perfect heart, in perfect timing, with an easy smile. It's a rhythm, a sacred movement inward and outward, of breaking and mending, of rest and return. It's remembering what matters and releasing what doesn't. It's choosing presence over perfection. It's grace. Even now, returning to my own words, tracing each ripple again through the lens of time has become a ripple of its own. There's something deeply therapeutic about tending to your own story with care, peeling back each layer, not to undo it, but to understand it more fully. Editing, I've come to realize, is a kind of soul sifting, a way of honoring what remains after the storm settles. It's in the refining that we sometimes see most clearly the shape of our growth, who we truly are, and how far we've come. Your healing will not look like mine. You have your own ripples. They might take shape in journaling by candlelight, or simmer in the comfort of soup made from scratch. Maybe they are sounds of worship music in your car, or the echoes of laughter with your kids. You might find them in therapy sessions marked by vulnerable exchanges and brave truths, silent hikes, and messy artwork that allows your soul to speak. They could rise while dancing barefoot in your living room, stargazing under an open sky, or snapping photos of the small wonders on your daily walks. Perhaps they live in the rhythm of knitting a soft blanket, in the stillness of a quiet cup of tea, or in the act of planting seeds on a sunny windowsill. They may hum in the vibration of a controller as you game with your friends, disconnecting from the day and reconnecting with your community, near or far. Or arrive unexpectedly, volunteering at a local food pantry, reading aloud to a friend, or in a pause of breath when the world feels too loud. The possibilities are endless. Your ripples might be hiding in places you've never thought to look. Wherever peace calls, go there. That's your ripple. And maybe when you can, offer that piece to someone else. As I close this chapter, I can feel my mom's spirit, wise, warm, and always a little mischievous. My mom had a way of giving voices to our pets that made them feel human, but none were quite as unforgettable as the one she gave our dog Schmedley. She'd jut out her chin, squint slightly, and slip into this thick, syrupy drawl, like a country boy who'd had one too many long afternoons in the heat. Or maybe he was a little buzzed on moonshine, but always full of charm. His voice was slow, slurred, and a little raspy, like honey poured over gravel. She'd say things like, "Ma, I don't want to do it. I'm tired," dragging the syllables like they were stuck in molasses, with a drawn-out twang that would have us all in an uproar of laughter. It wasn't just a voice. It was a whole performance, a whole personality full of lazy complaints and silly commentary. Like he was an old Southern soul trapped in an old English bulldog body. It was one of those quirky, hilarious things that only she could do, that somehow said, "I love you," without ever needing to say the words. Even now, if I close my eyes, I can hear it. That unmistakable, lopsided accent she made just for him. I hear him saying, "Okay, it's over. She's finally done. Now scratch my ass." And Gracie, of course, already curled up in a sunbeam, adding in her classic Valley Girl sass. "Quiet! I'm taking a snap over here. Thank you." Just like that, I'm laughing through tears because that was her gift. We would just laugh. We'd lose it. The kind of laughter that took over everything. Red face, stomachs cramping, doubled over, gasping for air between wheezes and snorts. The kind that made your cheeks sore and your soul lighter. Every time she slipped into that ridiculous voice, it would send us spiraling into uncontrollable, can't breathe, hold on to the counter kind of joy. It wasn't just funny. It was the best medicine. She'd let that joy and sorrow dance together to make you laugh when your heart was breaking, just by being her, fully, in the most lovable way. And so here we are. The ripple continues with you now. For every soul holding on through their own storm, may you find ripples. May your ripples reach far and wide. May they bring healing to places you didn't know were broken. May you trust the God who started this work in you is not finished yet. With love, grace, and so much hope. Melinda. Thank you so much for listening to Ripples of Healing and Hope. I hope something in these pages met you right where you needed it today. If you'd like to go a little deeper, the paperback and ebook include some extras, like healing playlists, video montage, reflection prompts, and resources to explore your own ripples. You can find my books on Amazon or through my socials and Linktree at Healing in Ripples. Thank you again for listening, and may your ripples of healing keep spreading in beautiful ways.